Singleton breaks free. Nick Singleton has gone. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
See if they take a shot here. Howard looking to launch right down the middle. Smoak is wide open. Too easy.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Let's look here. Quinn Ewers trying to audible.
To stay alive. Can they hook him? Touchdown, Matthew Golden.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Jaden Harrison bringing back the kickoff. He brought two back for touchdowns last year when he played for the Thundering Herd of Marshall, and he has one for Notre Dame.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Golden with a chance as a return man to set up Texas in good field position as he returns it from the 25.
And he breaks through. Look at Silas Bolden. Goodbye.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this start of a new week, a week when we're going to find out who's going to eventually play. We could do that every week, but the national championship in college football later on after the semifinals coming up on Thursday and Friday. Tonight, we're going to figure out who's the FCS champion, whether it's long-time, many-time champion North Dakota State or Montana State. More on that, and also an analyst for a segment on that. We'll also today have Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame great, NFL with the Eagles and Seattle Seahawks and the Fighting Irish. Phil Bennett today. And then also today, Cedric Golden, Austin American statesman, and Paul Catalina's top five. And we have a lot to get to, a lot of transfer portal notes, some college football coaching notes, and more. Let's start with the championship game that is tonight. Montana State, they won the national title in 1984. And they have been right on the edge many times since that time, but they did win it at 84. And, of course, against North Dakota State, who has been to 11 of the last 14 championship games and winning almost all of them with what they've done with names like Craig Bohl, Chris Kleiman, Entz, who's now at USC, among many others. I love that this game's going to be on all by itself. Great audience, you would hope, tonight on ESPN's kicks off right as soon as we say goodbye at 6.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting one. I know that you talked to Sam Herder earlier, and this game is usually really good. This is the last one in Frisco. It's kind of a bummer.
Well, they're renovating.
Yeah.
So they're going to go to Nashville, I think it is, I think, for a couple of years. But, yeah, they'll be back there.
I get it. I mean, I have to go to Nashville at least twice a year. So it's a cool place. It's a good place to do it. So hopefully to go back to Frisco because I think Frisco does a good job of doing that. But Montana State's got some big old dudes now for an FCS school. They've got some size. They are going to punch you in the mouth. So look, North Dakota State, watching the Cowboys yesterday, two guys played the whole game, Hunter Lipke and Trey Lance, North Dakota State. Yep. So they're throwing. Look, Carson Wentz started yesterday. It was North Dakota State Day in the NFL leading up to this. So maybe that'll be good. So for them tonight.
I think it's great the NFL took Monday Night Football off to give them their whole stage. No, I mean, not really, but, hey, you can spin it that way if you want. Nobody will be the wiser. But, if you were feeling like there wasn't going to be any football on, you might have a craving for it. There will, in fact, be this dish served up and should be a piping hot game. I know you've got the storyline with North Dakota State having won so many titles, but here is Montana State with an opportunity to win their first title since 1984. So you've got kind of the new blood versus the blue blood, I guess, in a lot of ways, is seeing somebody who's been there, done that so many times. And I think you were to poll most people on who's your typical FCS champion, I think North Dakota State or some version of Dakota would get mentioned probably by most people. But, yeah, you got one of the Blue Bloods versus a team that hasn't won it in a very long time. So that's a very intriguing storyline in its own right, and it ought to be just good football.
It's amazing how things have changed. You know, some of the schools who are now a part of FBS that have been bumped up from where they were, who had success, for example, Marshall was an FCS champion one year. Georgia Southern had a run for a couple of, maybe even more than that. Appalachian State, James Madison, Western Kentucky. And then all of a sudden in 2011, North Dakota State just said, this is mine. They won it in 11, 12. Craig Bohl was also the head coach when they won it 3 consecutive times. He now is here in Waco as the executive director of the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association. Chris Kleiman won it back-to-back. They won 5 in a row. 5 in a row. James Madison, then North Dakota State, 3 in a row. Chris Kleiman got a couple of more. Then Matt Ertz won it. And then Casey Keeler, who's now at Temple, he, of course, was at Sam Houston State. North Dakota State won it again in the last couple of years, South Dakota State. It is amazing how the Dakotas have owned that particular championship. And so 2 passionate fan bases. I believe, just off the top of my head, SFA, Stephen F. Austin, in 1989, they had Larry Centers and a few others that were great players. Lost to Georgia Southern in the FCS championship game. And I believe they may have lost to Montana State a couple of years after that. And now, of course, they just haven't been a part of that mix whatsoever. Paul, you going to make a pick?
I'm going to take Montana State.
Yeah, I mean, I have no real idea on the breakdown of this game, but I will be, interested in just following along with it. I'll go ahead and pick Montana State, just something new. I know North Dakota State hasn't won it themselves in about 4 years, so if they weren't to win it this year, then that'd feel like a pretty long drought, I'm sure, for them. But, yeah, I'll go Montana State, go with the new booty, so to speak, and the team that has a chance to cap off a 16-0 season, which you have North Dakota State with a couple of losses. So let's see Montana State try and complete the perfect sweep.
In fact, the first year that Montana State won it in '84, they started out with a couple of losses, then went on and under Dave Arnold ran the table. A couple of other schools who are now FBS. Youngstown State is a team that used to dominate in the Louisiana Monroe, Southern Illinois. Boise State won it in 1980. So a little history of some of the teams. Montana won it back in 2001. Now, this is an NFL note, but it could be a college football note that Seattle, after 1 year, remember Ryan Grubb? He was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies under Kalen DeBoer. He was then hired by Alabama. Then he was taken away pretty quickly by the NFL. Seattle Seahawks, their season ended, and he has been fired. And then Pat Smith, who is, of course, from WJOX in Birmingham, said, keep your eyes out for this one. Maybe the possibility that Kalen DeBoer might get his offensive coordinator back under his wing in Alabama.
You think? Yeah, I think that's going to happen. And Alabama to wherever. I'm a little surprised Ryan Grubb is out. Given I was watching the Seahawks yesterday, and Geno Smith hit all of his incentives. He threw for 4,000 yards. He won 10 games. I think injuries are more of their problem than the scheme was. But just like with everything, if you don't feel like a guy's a fit, then you have to move on. So that one surprised me a little bit because I didn't, granted not following the Seahawks as closely, I didn't realize they had so many gripes with their offense this year, especially since, the quarterback hit all of his incentives. To me, that means you had some numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they finished 10-7, so that's not a bad deal there. And so maybe it's less about not meeting expectations and more about maybe just desires to move in a different direction for one or both parties. Not really sure, but whatever is – Seattle's loss in this situation, in your estimation, is very much a possibility to be Alabama's gain, because if it's up to the fans on social media right now, Ryan Grubb's going to be the new OC at Alabama in short order. We'll have to actually see that, but he does have an extensive history with DeBoer that goes beyond even just Washington here most recently. But I think that would seem to be a logical correction to his year one staff to get it to where he wanted it originally with Ryan Grubb in the mix as his OC. So with what we saw from Alabama this year, that offense wasn't exactly operating full cylinder. So, yeah, this seems like it would be a no-brainer, not knowing the logistics of what could possibly get in the way with it. But, yeah, Alabama fans hungry to see that move, and you can understand why, given the success those two have had together.
Dave Aranda is working on his coaching staff. In fact, 2 coaches on the defensive side, outside linebackers coach Caleb Collins and defensive backs coach, the cornerbacks coach Kevin Curtis today have been relieved of their duties, asked to move on, and now he will find a couple of new coaches on his staff. Collins replaced Joey McGuire when he took the job at Texas Tech. Kevin Curtis has been there too, and so now Coach Aranda will be trying to find a couple. By the way, the AFCA, I mentioned that earlier, their convention's coming up, and this is when you see a lot of coaches who are available or not. This is like almost a meat market in a way. So Dave Aranda will try to find a couple of coaches to replace Collins and Curtis.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised on Caleb Collins because I thought the linebackers were good the last couple of years, but again, changes happen. Not really surprised on Kevin Curtis in that. I think if you had to pick, go through all 13 games that they played, which position was probably on the list most of didn't have a good game. Cornerbacks was that one. Like I'm not sure. Like I'm not going to go back through all 13 games, but if you had to say, who was in double digits of that list, I think cornerbacks would probably be the first one off that would rattle off your brain.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Collins was a young coach, or still is a young coach in a lot of ways, but he was especially a young pup when he was plucked to replace Joey McGuire, as you mentioned, and has had, I guess, a pretty okay stint. I wouldn't know how to really measure it and grade it overall off the top of my head, just that group specifically, but I thought he did an okay job. Clearly, Aranda sees it a lot differently and a lot more in depth and with a lot more knowledge behind what he's watching. So I don't know that I was really anticipating staff moves on their end, but I'm encouraged by it, actually. I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs, but I do like that they're not sitting on their hands, and this is exactly what happened a couple years ago when they were riding success. Actually, a couple years ago now, it's 4 years ago. Man, the calendar's rolling over. It's like, oh, yeah, 2021. No, that's 4 years ago now. So, I think back then he sat on his hands and learned a rude lesson from that almost cost him his job, and now – we all want to see him, and I think he's very self-aware that he needs to be proactive. But, yeah, this went beyond my expectations. To see Collins go, I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then to see the Kevin Curtis news here in the last few minutes just break, I was really surprised by that as well, although not shocked, because I think if you're trying to get better and be the best that you possibly can, not like, oh, hey, we were good, so we don't need to change anything. But if you're going like, how can we get better even if we were pretty good? Those are a couple areas where I do think you rank a little bit lower, especially at corner, and those are definitely areas where you could be better, more elite. So I think if you're scanning across this team and doing the kind of self-evaluation that we know they're doing right now, I think the moves make plenty of sense, and especially if you're trying to go out there and be aggressive and maximize what you have. I think you can see where maybe Aranda's coming from and trying to shake this defense up a little bit on the back end, because as we saw against LSU and we saw throughout the year, getting pressure on the quarterback was an issue.
Yep.
That needs to be corrected. But elsewhere, just defensively, I think you do look at like the back seven and you can see where there's a lot of room for improvement.
By the way, they rated 11th out of the 16 teams Baylor did against the pass with 230 yards per game. I think one of the things that I heard, and I think even Phil Bennett, he'll join us today a little bit earlier than normal, maybe get his feedback, is there seemed like there were a lot of either blown coverages, which could be on the player, or there were a lot of receivers running free. And in this day and age, that's going to happen, but it happened, it seemed like, a lot more than you want if you're going to try to win, get back to winning a Big 12 championship. I thought this was really cool from Caleb Collins in his farewell post. It sucks being let go for the first time, but I'm excited. He actually, in a farewell post, didn't act like it was like he's leaving. He is leaving, but I thought it was pretty cool that he admitted that he was let go by Dave Aranda. Seems to be a really good dude, and good luck to him moving forward.
Yeah, he's just a young coach. I mean, he's very early in his journey. Curtis is a more seasoned guy at this point, so I think both will be fine. You mentioned the meat market that is, the get-together and the meeting of coaches here coming up and all that will, be going on there. And so as much as Dave Aranda might be out on the prowl, although I don't think you make these moves without having some idea of what you're going to do next, it's also an opportunity for those two to now go out and shake hands and kiss babies and do all that and find themselves a new job. So the timing lines up for both sides. Wish them both the best. Kevin Curtis was, a big part of that championship team, and he's been around, I think, since day one with Aranda, so I'm sure that couldn't have been easy to part ways. And good on Collins for, just, I guess, poking through and just saying, like, I got let go. A lot of guys probably wouldn't do that because of ego, but he just put it out there and let everybody know. So, I'm sure that was tough to do and a tough day-to-day, but he's a young coach, as I mentioned a couple times, that has now a lot more experience under his belt, and I think he'll be better for it.
The AFC convention will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, January 12th, 13th, and 14th, coming up, not this weekend, but early next week. Jacksonville State wide receiver Cam Vaughn committed to former Jacksonville State head coach Rich Rodriguez, Virginia, number one wide receiver that he had at Jack State, 803 receiving yards, sixth among Conference USA, 5 touchdowns, 48 catches, young player too, redshirt freshman. He is committed to West Virginia and Rich Rodriguez. Go ahead, Craig, and then I got one other Big 12 transfer note.
Yeah, I just think it's been fun to see the excitement that Rich Rodriguez has brought back to West Virginia. This seems like just a logical but also smart pickup for the Mountaineers to add to their offense. So that's a good get, and definitely one of the guys you probably had circled from that roster that you wanted to see brought over to Morgantown. So I think a few Mountaineers fans got their wishes, and I think the just belief in Rich Rodriguez and the excitement that you see for any fan base, unless you've done it like multiple times in recent years where you're turning over rosters because you're so bad. But West Virginia hasn't done this in a few years since Neil Brown took over. So it's fun to see them like kids at Christmas, awaiting the next president, what that's going to be, and then unwrapping it and either being satisfied or not so sure about it, but excited nonetheless about this pile of presents that they have that are all these new things that they hope will add up to a really great thing moving forward for their football program. And so it's night and day from Neil Brown, like what we've been talking about the last couple years of isn't he on a hot seat, or did he do enough, did he not do enough? Now it's all about just building this thing, and that's refreshing and exciting. And so if I'm feeling that, I know that West Virginia fans are certainly feeling that.
Yeah, and Kim Coulter mentioned this in the chat as well. That if you look at, we know what Joey at Tech, a lot of other programs are making these moves because you sit around, even if you're pretty good, if you sit around and you're not careful, then you can have somebody pass you by, and you got to tweak and get better at every position. Everybody does it. They just don't always of course, do it immediately. And so Dave Aranda and his staff looking for a couple of new coaches. Kendall Daniels, this guy's a really good player from Oklahoma State. He's going to go just travel a little bit to the southwest into Norman. 240 tackles, 7.5 sacks in 3 years. Freshman All-American, Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. He played at Oklahoma State. He is headed to play for Brent Venables at OU in Norman.
Yeah, hey, great news for you, Craig. They also got Marvin Jones Jr., by the way. I don't know how you feel about that one. He's on his third spot.
If it's not Marvin Jones Sr., then I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: I'm not really that worried about the defense.
Yeah,
the defense is actually pretty okay, but yeah, I know the Marvin Jones. I mean, it's like
it is what it is. Whatever happens.
It's like, hey, if you show up and you add something to the mix, that's great, but I'm not going to get my hopes up that you're bringing something massive to the plate just yet. I got to see you out there and actually doing it, and then I'll get my excitement levels up. But, yeah, a guy who's kind of a journeyman at this point, I just, wait and see and not get too up in arms over Marvin Jones that they're going to unlock all of that potential for him.
All right, more.
But Kendall Daniels, that's a really good pickup.
Yeah,
and
6'4", 240, so he's a hoss.
I do like that one. And in addition to Marvin Jones Jr., like I like that Venables is doing some things over on that side of the ball because they're not perfect over there by any stretch. But, yeah, I am far more worried about the offense finding itself under Arbuckle and John Mateer than a defense that was still pretty solid for the most part last year. I don't think that's going to really be a major concern for you with Brent Venables, but adding a couple big-time players potentially makes that side even better, and so that's great. But, again, I'll believe it when I see it with Jones. Daniels, though, watched a lot of him, and And I don't know. That's a couple guys now in the last 2 or 3 years that have gone from Oklahoma State to Oklahoma, and I know that's just a weird feeling. It's just an icky sort of feeling. Not so much for the player, obviously. That's probably pretty cool. But, as an Oklahoma State fan, I bet you're just feeling like your skin's crawling a little bit when you see guys go down to Norman. That's not ever fun to see that. Anywhere else but the Sooners, Kendall Daniels.
Yeah.
Like anywhere else, but you got to go to Oklahoma. All right, then. Good luck to you.
Yeah, that always got to bite a little bit, Kendall Daniels. Also, this young man, I don't know if he'll ever get a chance to play if he ever stays somewhere and actually does get a chance to play, but Jaden Rashada, this has been a weird story. And then again, maybe it's textbook these days. Committed to Miami, then went to Florida. Then there was the issue about whether or not he was ever promised or received his NIL. Then he transferred to Arizona State. Oh, how about a guy named Sam Levitt as the starting quarterback who's a freshman? Georgia, I don't know if he ever hit the field. And now he's in the portal again.
Yeah, that's it's unfortunate. Like, I don't want to judge him as a human being. I don't know anything about him. I know that his situation is he's kind of the first guy over the wall when it came to I was promised this. I believe I was promised this much at Miami. I signed it. I actually did sign with Florida and was promised as much, and I have it in writing. The coaches told me all this when I got there. And then it wasn't the right thing, so I left. So think of this. He leaves Arizona State after he started 2 games as a freshman and played in the 3rd game, the first 2. And he looked okay. He looked pretty like he had a lot of potential. And then he goes to Georgia. Well, I thought he was the 3rd quarterback at Georgia. Turns out he was actually the 4th quarterback at Georgia. So he never saw
watching Gunnar Stockton like he's got no free pass to the job.
So there was a wall there. So I just hope that whatever choice he makes, he gets to play and tap into that potential because Arizona State didn't miss him. And I don't know that I don't think that's an indictment on him, but Sam Levitt came in and just kicked ass all year long. In fact, they lost the game in the Big 12 where they didn't have Sam Levitt. Otherwise, their season's it's not even a question if they're getting seeded in the playoff if they won that game against Cincinnati. So all of that being said, I just hope it works out the best for him. And I think that he's kind of the avatar for the things that do suck about the new world of college football, where there are good things. Cam Ward's a good thing. There are, Jared Verse, a good thing. There's lots of good things.
John Mateer is now probably a millionaire, so that's a great thing for guys like him.
But for a guy like Jaden Rashada, it sucks. And it's I don't know if it's his fault, if it's everybody's fault, but it sucks.
Well, 2 of the 4 teams in the semifinals have quarterbacks, am I correct, that are transfers. Quinn Ewers, who was at Ohio State, went to Texas, and then, of course, I'm getting ready to go blank. Riley Leonard from Duke. Thank you, Garrett, who's now at Notre Dame. Ohio State, 3 of the 4, with Howard, who's now there after being at Kansas State. So it's part of the game. It's part of the deal. But, man, this seems to be a lot of moving, and you wonder, are you running away from not being able to play because you're not good enough to play, or is it just such a free market that this is what we're going to see more often than not?
No, I think Jaden Rashada is the outlier, and he's the poster boy for what's wrong with the negative parts of the portal and the lack of rules and whatever else, the freedom of movement. I think we're all in favor of those things, not the lack of rules so much. We would like to see that corral just a little bit so it's not so chaotic and you don't have guys just aimlessly wandering around, which at this point is what it feels like Jaden Rashada's doing.
Yeah.
I hope he actually has, earned class credits, that can travel, because at this point, honestly, he probably needs to worry about getting his degree.
Yeah.
You probably need to, not just assume you're going to fall back and be a top 5 NFL draft pick like you probably thought when you started this journey. Don't know him. Nothing against the young man. He's young and, life's confusing and takes you in all sorts of different directions. But my gosh, man, I just don't know how this is good for anybody. I just don't know how bouncing around like this is good for anybody. And you bring up these transfer quarterbacks. Okay, Quinn Ewers was at Ohio State for a year, and he wasn't expected to start and didn't, and did his thing. And, then when the opportunity came, which I wonder how much he was all planned out ahead of time. Not that he went to Ohio State thinking, I'm going to jump to Texas, but I think he probably had a backup plan of if this doesn't work out, I know what I can pivot towards. So he was there a year fine. Columbus wasn't for you anymore. Texas is a better opportunity. That's great. Riley Leonard carved out a pretty damn good career at Duke and then decided with his remaining eligibility, I'm going to go give this another shot, and I'm going to go make some big money, and I'm going to go try to play for a national championship. And look at what the hell he's doing right now. Will Howard, pretty good damn career at Kansas State. Decided, I'm not done playing college ball. I'm going to go make some money, and I'm going to go play for a national championship. Worked out pretty well for him.
And
so those guys
had an idea he may not be the starter this year.
Do what?
Howard? He also had the Avery Johnson factor, too.
Yeah. I mean, there was that as well. But I'm just saying, like, these guys had played and done things, or in Ewer's case, he was somewhere for a spot. He was just there for a year, not even a year. With Rashada, he's bouncing around, 3 years, 4 schools or whatever. Like, this is entirely different from those guys' situations. This is the poster child for what's really not probably the healthiest for the sport or for these young guys. So good luck to him. I don't know where the next place will take him, but he's checking blue bloods and various playoff teams off the list. I mean, like a quarter of the playoff teams he's already played for, it feels like. So, good luck to you. And I don't know where this takes him now, but interested to see nonetheless.
DeCario Davis, who stayed last year at Arizona, there were thoughts he would leave. He's now headed to Washington to play for his former coach, Arizona State cornerback, 6'4", big, tall, lanky corner.
He played for Arizona, not Arizona State.
Did I say Arizona? Transferring now to where he is with his former coach at Washington.
Yeah, one of the guys that Arizona got to bring back despite Jed Fish leaving, and he felt really good about him and one of your stars. And, bitter pill to swallow to see him now leaving as well and going to reconnect with Jed Fish. So, I don't know what the offseason holds for Arizona. I know that the media covered him. Our boy Jason Shear and, various others are not all that high on the Brent Brennan regime right now. And it doesn't help when you're losing. Now you won't even have Tetero McMillan because he'll be off, as a first-round draft pick in the NFL here in a few months, and DeCario Davis leaves. And so Noah Fafita's coming back, and there'll be some other guys. But, it's kind of like the Fresh Prince meme all of a sudden, but it's Noah Fafita looking around the room at all the guys that were there just a year ago. It's pretty much just almost feels like him now. And I don't know if he's capable of carrying the weight and what they'll need to get done next year to try and build a better situation than what we saw coming out of this year.
I am so surprised that he is still there.
I'm a little bit surprised, but he's every story you read about him, he is so loyal to Arizona. Like the whole Tetero McMillan even ending up there, and that whole contingent of high school guys that all played together and then all went to Arizona together. Like McMillan was committed to Oregon, and I think it was Jacob Manu or someone else was either uncommitted or committed elsewhere, and he was like the ringleader that got all those guys basically to Arizona eventually. So he has a deep love for that program. But I'm with you, Paul. Like, he could probably go make a lot of money somewhere else. He's not going to play in the NFL as a high-level player, if at all. He's not big enough. But in college, he can do some more damage with the right fit. I don't know if it's Arizona or not, but it's great for them that he decided to stay, because otherwise I don't know what you're really pointing to right now and all that excited about. And even with him coming back, you're still going, okay, but what else do we have here? So they have a lot of work to do to try and get back to the form from a couple seasons ago and put on a better showing than they did in this debut year in the Big 12.
The Branch brothers, Zachariah, who can flat out go. I remember watching him as a freshman. I don't exactly know who it was against, but this guy is a big play type of I'm not comparing him to anyone in particular, but he's got that quick twitch like a Tyreek Hill. Not saying that that's who he is. He's kind of more of a utility type guy, great returner. He is also, along with his brother, who is Zion, the safety, are headed to play for Kirby Smart and Georgia.
Yeah, that's a huge get for Georgia. And I talked about this earlier on the triple option, but I'm going to assume you guys are going to agree with me. Production over potential when the portal. If you want potential, that's your high school recruiting. If you want production, that's the portal, right? I know that this guy has put up numbers. And if you go for too much potential in the portal, you wind up going, oh, damn. Well, yeah. I mean, look, they haven't produced yet. Are you surprised that they didn't produce? I know that you believe that you can get out of, but the potential in the portal is okay, let's have a couple of those. I use it's a buffet, the portal, right?
No. But if you're Georgia, you're going to get your potential, and a lot of that's more than potential
in high school, right? Well, Zachariah Branch and his brother have produced. They've got stats. They've got skins on the wall, and you can see the speed, and you can see the things that Zachariah Branch has done. He's not leaving USC because he's unrealized talent and can't go anywhere else. He's leaving USC because he wants to, and so if he goes to Georgia, and they did not have those kind of playmakers this year. They're not playing this week because they didn't. And we're almost not playing in the playoff at all because they didn't. And you get a guy like Zachariah Branch that you can build that around, I think that'll work out well.
Yeah, I mean, Paul said they bring a lot of production, a lot of experience, and I think in the case of was it Zion, after missing a couple years, cut short injuries, finally got to stay healthy this past season, so that's encouraging. But, yeah, it seemed like a nice little dynamic duo. Obviously, you got the brotherly chemistry and having played together a lot, but I think that'll carry over and make the transition even that much easier for the Branch brothers heading off together, right, to a new place. That'll make that transition a lot more fun and an experience I can only imagine not having a brother, but I think that'd be a pretty cool deal to be able to just, hey, let's go to USC and continue our playing day, or to USC, or no, to Georgia and continue our playing days after playing together at USC. That's just a cool little unique story. But, yeah, talent-wise, Georgia's definitely adding some to what's an already pretty big, large, tall pile of talent and re-gearing up for next year.
He had a kick and a punt return, both from each as a freshman. Didn't do anything really with that much last year on kicks and punt returns. Had 47 catches, 503 yards, 1 touchdown. As dynamic as he is, he hasn't really produced a lot when it comes to the plays. Like, he's averaging 10 yards per catch. And that's kind of what he's done. He doesn't get the ball in a running back position very often. So I don't know. I remember he was dynamic early on as his freshman year. We'll see what he can do with Kirby Smart and Georgia. Speaking of somebody that's moved around, former Boise State and USC 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson is headed to play for Coach Walden at UTEP. Ranked as the #1 overall recruit in ESPN's class of 2023, and now headed and the most highly recruited athlete to ever step on the campus at UTEP as a football player.
Yeah, I hope he gets to play. Part of me, I feel bad for him. Look, the USC thing still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but if you didn't want to be there, you didn't want to be there. And then he went to Boise State, and Maddox Madsen was the guy there. I mean, he just took over that job. He got him to the playoff, and, he couldn't see the field. So I'm assuming at UTEP, he's got to have a leg up on the starting job.
How much does ESPN's class of 2023 rankings take a hit here?
Yeah.
We should be following ESPN's recruiting class rankings anyways, and it shouldn't have been for years now at this point. I know some people that do work on that, no disrespect, but I think if you're looking for recruiting rankings and how much chalk you want to put into that to begin with, you don't start with ESPN's rankings. That's actually the last one you go to in recent years. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that's pretty much been the status quo. You'd go to a 247 or a
Well, you know why they used ESPN here was because it's Stambles. That's where he works.
Yeah,
you're
so,
right about what you're saying.
But I don't even know why they do recruiting rankings over there still at this point. Like at one point they were actually trying to compete and do it alongside rivals and even scout and all that. But I don't know many, if any, people that put all that much stock in the actual ESPN recruiting rankings. Like, I think they're just there as another form of reference and maybe part of another formula. But, yeah, I don't think those are by any means the industry standard or have been for a long time.
All right.
And, by the way, Malachi Nelson, Jaden Rashada, Malachi Nelson. No, that's kind of the path he's walking a little bit. So that's cool for UTEP. El Paso's a great city and big city. So I'm sure there's an opportunity to make some good NIL money there if you do well for yourself. But, yeah, you just hope at this point the guy can actually grab hold of a job and show off why he was so highly touted to begin with, because we haven't seen that yet. So, yeah, a couple of quarterbacks now finding landing spots, and maybe Jaden Rashada needs to end up at a UTEP or somewhere along those lines. Maybe that would work out better for him. But, yeah, I'm hoping for Nelson this is the last stop and he can flash his potential out there.
I just typed class of 2023 rivals, and Nelson was 14th. So, yeah, everyone has their own rankings, but Rivals 247 and On3's been trying to jump into that quite a bit, too, with what they do. DeQuan Finn. Remember when he announced that he would transfer to Baylor out of Toledo, was a dynamic player. And in the Mid-American Conference, he started their first, 2 or 3 games. He got hurt and saw the field only one time that I remember after Sawyer Robertson took the job and just grabbed it by the throat. He had a long touchdown run against Tech. He's headed back to where he was in a way. This time, instead of playing for Toledo, he's going to play for Miami of Ohio. And I wish him the best. I always thought he was a class kid.
Yeah, and look, he's I think when you have production from him, you didn't have production this year. He got hurt. He wasn't great in the games that he played. I don't know what would have happened had he not been hurt this year. I think that the story might have been a little bit different. Maybe he gets it going. Maybe he fits in the offense. But, part of his thing was it's a little bit like a Chandler Morris, Max Duggan thing to a lesser degree of he's here, thought it was going to be him. He got hurt, and turns out Sawyer Robertson was the right guy at the right time for this offense, and everything just clicked for him. So, bummer for DeQuan Finn. I think he'll probably rip it up at Miami, Ohio, and best of luck to him in the future.
Man, I don't feel anything but, well wishes for DeQuan Finn, and nobody should feel bad. The kid came to town and was around for 10 months and made several $100,000 to do ultimately very little on the field. I mean, you said, I think he played 2 or 3 games at the beginning. No, he made it to the second game and got hurt against Utah, and then we didn't see him for an entire month and a half, and then he came in and he had a touchdown run at the end of the game. That was his entire Baylor career. Starting game 1, starting game 2, get hurt, return 6 weeks later, touchdown run late in the game, story over.
Yep.
And he made probably several $100,000 to do all of that. Now, I know there were some practices and whatnot, but, I don't feel bad for him. I actually think he's very fortunate in that he got the opportunity at Baylor, didn't work out, and then he still got another year on top of that to go finish out his college career. So I don't know the extent of his actual injuries and what kept him off the field versus Sawyer Robertson keeping him off the field. It worked out eventually for Baylor. This seems like it's going to work out well for him, and good luck to him. And, I just think that, it became clear pretty early that Sawyer was kind of the man around here, and he went out and proved that. And just DeQuan's very fortunate that there was that ability to get another year, because that would have been a terrible way to have your college career end just sort of abruptly and quietly that way.
Well, I remember we had him on. Remember he was at that bootmaker out in China Spring, and he had his offensive lineman there with him. So that's one of the things I remember, not as much about what he did actually as a player. I do remember I mentioned the run again against Texas Tech too. So there we are with a lot of the stories from today. There are still many things to get to. I have a question we'll get to when we discuss the college football playoffs, but we do have Sam Herder on the FCS championship. Let me go ahead and bring this up, and you guys tell me what I'm missing other than the obvious. In the years past, when a team would win a conference championship, for example, 2005 Texas beat Colorado to win the national or to win the Big 12 title on a December 3rd. They didn't play USC until January the 4th. In 97, Nebraska won the Big 12 title in December 7th. They didn't play for the national championship until January 2nd. There's many examples of this. When Alabama in 2009 beat Florida on a December 5th, and then it was January 7th, they beat Texas for the national championship. There has always been a long layoff, and sometimes a month. Now, one of the things I knew someone would say is, but both teams were taking a month off. Let me ask you if any coach in America would rather do this, because I've seen a little bit of that. Well, getting the first-round bye is not a good deal. Tell me who would not want to have an automatic bye into the next round, have a chance not to play and get injured, and have a chance to rest and then know a little bit more about who you're playing.
You know what? I'm gonna give you my very short opinion on this. People try to find reasons for things that happen.
Exactly right.
There's no look. I remember when the Rockies lost to the Red Sox in the World Series, they'd won like 19 games in a row and they had this long layoff. Did it have anything to do with it? No, the Red Sox were better.
Yep.
Like, it's who's better. Like,
But that's not a good example. No. Let me tell you why. Because you have 7 games to maybe get your little engine
they still got
moving.
Swept.
Yeah,
they got swept in that series. But you can go through like, hey, look, the Chiefs are about to have 24 days off. Whatever it is between games, really, with the starters like Patrick Mahomes, who didn't play yesterday. If Patrick Mahomes comes back and doesn't play well and the Chiefs lose is because they had 24 days off, they've done that before and won. You know what? Here, this is for the people who don't understand this. Sports is about from the time the game starts to the time the game ends.
Yep.
That's all that happens.
But I just wanted
to lead up to that.
I was sitting at my desk and I was like, I wanted to at least go, wait, I'm going to go back and look. Maybe I'm wrong about the layoffs that have always been a part of the college football championship.
It's just people, they want to find reasons like, oh, why did we lose so bad? Maybe the other team just kicked your ass.
Yeah, or just was good that day and beat you.
I think just people are trying to scrape for whatever they can to squeeze out of this playoff conversation and every drip drop of anything they can talk about or whatever. And look, we're in a similar boat, but I think we've stayed away from dwelling on some of like the bigger things that have been like Twitter topics, like that just roll on there, so in some cases, I think with like the first round home field and things like that, like I absolutely understand those conversations, but like the layoff and that just to me immediately sounds like excuses. I do think there's a conversation to be had about expanding the field to 16 and nobody gets buys. Like I think would you rather have the home field versus the bye would be a fun question for coaches, but I think they'd probably all rather have the bye than the home field. But I don't know. Like that's something that you feel like maybe you're missing out on that you would get with a more expanded field. And I know people are against an expanded field, but all that. But yeah, like the layoff thing, like that to me is something I feel like I would have seen on Twitter and just scrolled right by. You stopped down on it, and I get it, but I think it's more excuses than anything else.
This was not a Twitter conversation. This was conversations by college football analysts. Yeah, there's some Twitter to everything because there's a timeline of that. But I just wanted to clarify for those who may not remember when there were 2 teams that played that there was always a lengthy – in fact, I mentioned this last week that one of the reasons that Tom Osborne in Nebraska, he said he finally had to do like a self-scout. The reason they struggled, ran the option, the triple option, not the triple, the I formation, was the timing was always bad. They always started slowly, so they started changing how they worked out in between winning the championship to getting to a championship in the way they practiced to make sure that they were fine too.
I think there's a legitimate conversation about how you could be rusty and whatnot with layoffs, but to your point, like that's been happening for forever. All these bowl games, most of these teams, especially ones that have played recently, have all been off for a month. Some of them look good, some of them don't. I don't think it boils down to you had all this time off. I think that's Georgia fans trying to cope with the fact their team's not in the playoff anymore, or whoever you want to point to and say that's no longer in there. It's just something to lean on and say, oh, well, this is why we're not in there. It's the layoffs. It's not that you simply got beat, right? Because that's too simple. That's too straightforward. So, yeah, that's how I take it at least.
All right, Sam Herder covers the FCS. We mentioned that to start the show. They play for a championship, North Dakota State and Montana State tonight in Frisco, 6 o'clock on ESPN. We'll hear from Phil Bennett about 4:40. We'll also hear from Cedric Golden, the Austin American-Statesman. He'll join us at 5 today. And former Notre Dame great Bobby Taylor on the Irish in their run to the semifinals. He'll join us today at 4:25 in Paul's Top 5, and this is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. If you drive by his office building, which is on Old Hewitt Road, not Hewitt Drive, but Old Hewitt Road, out front, there's a simple, I guess it's probably the sign that he has, brick or whatever, it says Men's Healthcare. That's what he does. A lot of what he gets attention for, which in this day and age is happening, is because of he's trying to treat ED or sex drive issues with low testosterone. But low testosterone can be a lot more than that. That's the one that gets a lot of the attention. My God, watch television throughout the week or weekends or not, whatever, and you see all the commercials for that. So he does that, yes. He will then take whatever he gets from your blood work. They will set it up. You contact Dr. Petty. They will get you set up with an appointment, have your blood drawn. He gets the results, get back in touch with you, and if your testosterone is too low, he can increase it because of a program that he has at Dr. Kent Petty and Petty Clinic, lowt.com. FCSFootball.com.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Customize your favorite ball from golf's top brands. For a limited time, take $5 off customization. Add your name or monogram, personal photo, or improve your game with a custom alignment aid. Available now at golfballs.com, the world leader in golf customization.
It's time to start something new at Allen Samuels. Drive into 2025 with huge savings on all of our Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles. From a trail-conquering Jeep Grand Cherokee, towing in style with a Ram Heavy Duty, or cruising the city in a sporty and luxurious Ram 1500, we've got the perfect ride for you. Stop by Allen Samuels in Waco, where we make car buying easy.
Come by. Let's be friends.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Sam Herder, senior FCS analyst, Hero Sports, and also on Twitter at Sam Herder FCS. We've had Sam on before about the FCS championship tonight. Montana State, a 4-decade drought. And yes, of course, the 800-pound gorilla in North Dakota State. Sam, thank you very much for your time. Obviously, North Dakota State's been around this thing a long time, over the last decade plus. Give me the story about Montana State and their quarterback, Malachi, and what kind of run they've made this year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And Montana State has really been the most dominant and well-rounded FCS team this year. They had a close game with FBS New Mexico, but won that one to start the year in week 0. And ever since then, they've really won most of their games pretty comfortably. Their closest game was against a really good UC Davis team where they won by 2 points, but the Bobcats did have a huge lead in that one before UC Davis kind of climbed back and scored a few touchdowns in the fourth quarter there. So it has been a dominant season for Montana State. I know it's kind of a cliche to say we're going to go 1-0 every week. Like, it seems like every team says that, but Montana State has really taken that approach of just going 1-0 every week, because I think the Bobcats were really good last year, but I think they got ahead of themselves a little bit as far as thinking they were national title contenders. And last year really ended in disappointment for Montana State against NDSU. So I think this year the team just looks very laser focused to take it 1 week at a time.
So how good is Malachi, the quarterback who won the Walter Payton Award? So obviously the best player in FCS.
Yeah, he's dynamic. He doesn't have the prototypical quarterback size. I think he's probably, 6 feet, 215 pounds, somewhere around there, but he's well put together. Super, super fast guy, probably the fastest guy on the field. So he has great running ability, but his evolution has really been as a passer. Again, he's not the prototypical passer, throwing motion and, 7-step drop sitting in the pocket. That's not necessarily a strength, but in previous years, it was a lot of easy routes, a lot of fade routes and all of that. But this year he's really evolved as a quarterback, and he can make all the throws. And so he's a true dual threat and super fun to watch. He's from Butte, Montana, which is, one of the most legendary towns in the States. And so he's already a legend in the state of Montana, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if Montana State wins tonight, Malachi will go down as one of the most important figures in Montana sports history, the state overall.
I went to Stephen F. Austin, and of course, a lot of things have changed with what was in the 80s, like when Montana State won it in 84. They were really, really good, and at times played teams like that on the road, Montana State, whoever it might have been. But I do remember when they had success, and they've just kept knocking on the door. How much of a frustration it has been because the Dakota schools have dominated. We know that. How much of a frustration has it been for them to be so close, and yet it's been so long?
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, NDSU and South Dakota States are relatively new to Division I. In the grand scheme of things, they didn't join Division I until about 2004, 2005, somewhere around there for North Dakota State and South Dakota State. Now, that's obviously 20 years ago, but in the grand scheme of program history, it's not like they've been FCS for decades and decades and decades. And it was, especially Montana, but even a little bit Montana State, they were some of the powers in the FCS. And so for NDSU, especially, it's been South Dakota State the last couple of years, but really it only took NDSU about 3 years of being playoff eligible to win their first national title in 2011. And so they broke onto the scene and they took over, Montana's mantle as the power, and they took over Georgia Southern's mantle, as a power in the FCS, and they did it relatively quickly. And so for the last decade or so, people were chasing North Dakota State, and then South Dakota State was able to do that and overtake NDSU. And so now, people have been chasing South Dakota State and North Dakota State. And, when it comes to programs that can do so, you have to invest. You have to invest in nutrition and strength and conditioning and new facilities. And frankly, there's just not a lot of FCS programs out there anymore that have the internal and external support to fund things at an FBS level. But Montana State is one of those things where, yes, they're an FCS team, but how they operate, how they run things, it is definitely FBS level of how Montana State is funding its football program. Same thing with North Dakota State and South Dakota State.
Craig Bohl, Chris Kleiman, we know where he is. Craig now is running the American Football Coaches Association, actually located here. And of course, Matt Entz, the success he had, they win no matter what. And it's a program. We see that happen right now when it comes to FBS, the Power Fours or whatever. Teams have their consistency. How would you describe North Dakota State's dominance for the last, 11 appearances in 13 years? And they've won so many of those championships.
Yeah, it truly is a program. And I think with North Dakota State, their national success goes all the way back to Division II. And even before Division II, they were, I can't remember what it specifically, it was called, National College or Conference. I don't remember, this was like in the 60s or whatever the case may be. But NDSU has, I believe, 17 total national championships. And so they have 9 in the FCS, and, obviously plenty more in D2 and before them. And so when they broke onto the scene in the FCS and transitioned to Division I, they already had kind of this championship standard. And I think you see that as a program where it, they've gone through multiple head coaches and, they've gone through multiple NFL quarterbacks, and yet they keep on reloading. And I just think the foundation is there for just continued success because, a lot of FCS teams obviously want to be good in football, but a program like NDSU demands to be good in football. Like that, there's no other option. And so whether it's internally, the resources they put into football, or just a passionate fan base that supports NDSU. It's hard to see NDSU getting off this track no matter what changes go into place internally at NDSU. I mean, they just have such a strong support. And NDSU just a few years ago put up a $55 million practice facility that rivals probably any practice facility in all of college football. And they didn't use school money. They didn't use state money. All $55 million was privately raised by NDSU fans and boosters. There's not a lot of college football programs that can do that. And so that's why I think NDSU, no matter who their head coach is, no matter who their starting quarterback is, it's as much of a program as a football program can be with how they reload every year.
Sam Herder, FCS Hero Sports, with us, and at Sam Herder, HERDER, FCS on Twitter. You mentioned their run of North Dakota State, and I saw a note from you on your Twitter timeline that the 2010 win against Montana State's really something that launched them in the foundation of their dynasty run. What was that? Why was that game, that specific year, such a big deal?
Well, you go back to 2010, and NDSU was not what they are now. Obviously they made NDSU snuck into the playoffs in 2010 at 7-4. They won their first ever playoff game in the first round against Robert Morris in 2010. And so they were an unseeded team, and they went out to Montana State, who was kind of, even back then, was still a brand name in the FCS, and Montana State, I think, was like a seeded team, and NDSU trailed going into the fourth quarter. And then the Bison rattled off 28 straight points and really hammered Montana State for that playoff win. And then the next week, NDSU went out to Eastern Washington and was in a back-and-forth battle, lost in a controversial fashion with a fumble called on the goal line, lost by 7 points. I think it was in overtime. And then Eastern Washington later that year went on, a couple of rounds later, went on to win the national championship. And keep in mind, this was NDSU's first ever playoff appearance, so it was all new to them in how they beat Montana State and how they nearly beat the eventual national champs, Eastern Washington. I think that made NDSU realize, we're actually pretty close to being one of the best teams in the FCS. And then the next year, the Bison win their first national title in 2011, and they win 5 straight from 2011 to 2015. And so I think a lot of people point to that Eastern Washington really close loss as kind of like the launching point of NDSU realizing how good they can be. But I think it actually happened a week before at Montana State, a blue blood, where they beat up on them in the fourth quarter, and that made them realize that, okay, like our program has a chance to do something pretty special here.
All right, we mentioned Tommy Mellott, the Walter Payton Award winner. Cam Miller, obviously one heck of a player for North Dakota State. How much, not impact. We know he has to have an impact, but your thoughts about the career he's had? Yeah, it's been a special career for Cam Miller. And, he had the tough duty of taking over for, Brock Jensen. And then, after Brock Jensen, it was Carson Wentz, NFL draft pick. And then, I went to Easton Stick, an NFL draft pick. And then I went to Trey Lance, an NFL draft pick. And so the standard of quarterback play at NDSU is as high as it can be. And Cam Miller is now in his 4th year starting, I guess 5th year technically if you want to go back to the 2021 spring season where he started some games. But 2021 fall, he was okay. 2022, he played okay again. Like he was a pretty good quarterback, but not, an All-American out of Trey Lance. Last year, I thought he took a major step forward and had an All-American season. Yet Miller still faced a lot of doubts coming into this year, not only from national media, but also from NDSU fans, because Miller in previous games, he had struggled in some big playoff games. He came into this year never beating South Dakota State. I think Miller was 0-4 in his career against South Dakota State. So he faced doubts coming into this year. And this season, any doubters he has, I think he's quickly erased because he's put together a fantastic season. He beat South Dakota State twice. He's come up clutch in playoff performances. And so it's really been kind of a full circle moment for Miller because he did lead NDSU to the national title here in Frisco over Montana State 3 years ago. He was the starting quarterback, but NDSU really won that game with their ground game and defensively. And so if the Bison are able to get a win tonight,
to me, I think it's all gonna come down to Cam Miller's arm, because NDSU's rushing attack hasn't quite gotten going in the playoffs. And so I think they're going to put a lot on Miller's arm to go out there and win this game.
Man, I'm intrigued by this matchup because of the history of these two. Obviously, not only from that game many years ago, but also what Montana State's been trying to do and what North Dakota State has done amazingly. 11th championship appearance in 14 years, and we know that they have won a ton and also along the way beaten Montana State, including that one that launched them into this what has been a tremendous run and obviously a dynasty. Sam, thank you very much. I love the fact national TV, solo night tonight. They get all the attention. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it, and have a great day.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you for having me on.
Sam Herder, Hero Sports, on the FCS championship game, Montana State, North Dakota State in Frisco, and this is 365 Sports.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
4 o'clock hour. Appreciate Sam Herder. Tonight again, 6 o'clock kick, ESPN, the FCS Championship. So, let's go over a couple of things. The Big 12 Bowl overall, how they did. They were right there, about one game under 500. Of course, one team beat another team with the Colorado game with BYU. But overall, and kind of looking forward, but let's start with this. I was not a fan of this. I didn't like it when Kirby Hocutt went on or Cody Campbell and some of the insinuations. I know that you're, Mark, like other conference commissioners, fighting for their conference and their brethren, whatever. But he started out talking about how proud he was of Arizona State, and he should have been, in their effort and almost a play away from beating Texas. As a member of the College Football Playoff Management Committee, I have had multiple discussions seeking clarity surrounding the targeting call on Arizona State's final drive of the fourth quarter with Richard Clark, who, of course, is the executive director moving forward. I think we need to address ensuring the national standards are developed. So that means everything across the board. These standards will be crucial to the college football future. Look forward to discussing them with my fellow committee members. This was not like an in-your-face, complete whiny statement. I get what he's saying. I don't know if they could ever have clarity across the board. Here's the problem. We went through this before. The targeting call or non-call, and then you go back to the call against the receiver from Texas getting hit on the interception. Then you go, yeah, what about the second quarter? So that's why I try to stay away from specific calls.
I don't think that's what he's saying here, though, in my opinion.
I don't think he's talking about that specific call.
That. I think he's talking about what we talked about last week. What is targeting? Let's get a definition of it, and it's not being so nebulous. And let's not, I also, I've always thought the notion is bad as, you don't make that call then. No, you make the call.
No, you make the call.
The game's 60 minutes long. You make the same call in second one as the last second. You make the calls when the rules are violated. That's when you're supposed to make the calls. And then, people won't say, you don't make that call then or whatever.
That
then
comes
they can,
from the NBA.
Yeah, they could be. Yeah. I get it. But, that's one of the things that was you don't make that call then. No, bull crap. You make that call when you make that call. If it's targeting, it's targeting. Let's get into a situation because now targeting has become what is a catch. And, that's the new thing. Because I don't know, if you ask me, do you think that's targeting? And I say yes, and then they come back and say no, then I automatically think, well, I guess I don't know what targeting is. I don't know. So that's where I think he's coming from there.
Yeah, I saw this quote originally, and I was like, oh, this ought to be interesting to hear what he has to say. And it was a big ball of nothing really other than just saying what I think a lot of other people are saying right now or hoping for, and that is a national standard of officiating across college football. Mm-hmm. Nothing more, nothing less. He wasn't saying Arizona State got screwed. He wasn't igniting an atomic bomb, to go and raise college football and completely turn it on its head and, nothing extremely serious in any way other than just saying, hey, we're really proud of Arizona State, as they should be. They represented us very well, that they did. But, yeah, we feel like we kind of got screwed on this call. And while we could probably take the route of Utah's AD and really make this a thing, instead he just said, hey, Arizona State did us really proud. But, can we figure out this freaking targeting thing already? What is this? I think that's all he's saying, and that if you want to be a big boy sport and college football wants to be the NFL, clearly so many people in power want it to be, it's only logical that things need to change for the better in some cases, and officiating is right there near the top of the list. I think to not have across-the-board officiating is understandable given where the game has been, and it's understandable given some of the uniqueness where it's not a 32-team league, where it's chartered planes and all this for the officials and everything else, and full-time jobs, and this is all they do really. These are, different circumstances, and you're going all over the country, and, everything's just kind of different wherever you go. But that should not be the case with officiating, where you're in the SEC, so you're more prone to call this than if you were doing the Big 12 game or you're doing the ACC game. You don't call that here, but you call that in the Big 10. That should not be the case. It should be across the board. So with that, he's just stating what I think is the obvious need for college football, and that is across the board officiating. We don't need the Big 12 crew and the Pac-12 crew, and then we shuffle them around. We just need the crews. The crews all call the games the same ways, no matter if they're calling a game in California during the daytime or they're in Michigan at night. It should not be different based on your geography and the style of play. It should be that's targeting or it's not targeting. And that rule is at the very top of the confusion, clearly, because every weekend it's you don't know what's targeting or not.
I agree on all of that. But my part of it is I think that they should even be more specific and come up with specific targeting levels of calls. In basketball, you have a flagrant one or two. If you have, for example, what's the guy's name? Draymond Green compiles a bunch of them, then he's suspended for whatever. I think that targeting should not be an immediate ejection. I think that you ought to have some sort of, I'm not saying point system, because I don't want to make it more complicated, but it just seems to be such a damning penalty it's not only 15 yards, it's you're gone.
Oh, and it's happened how many times in like big moment situations?
And then you miss the next half of the next game.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems extremely over the top. Like, I get that this rule was made particularly when we were all very concerned about head injuries, right? Everybody all of a sudden, the NFL started to smell those lawsuits, and they were like, uh-oh, we better be like the most pro head injury, like, concern, people as much as we possibly can be, and they were, and everybody kind of woke up as we just live and learn and learn that things need to be tweaked. Hey, these head injuries are a real scare and real concern, and they need to be cleaned up. And so the reaction was extreme, and I think was made under a little bit of a shroud of not really knowing exactly what you're dealing with necessarily. But now I do think you have a much clearer picture. It's been handled now in certain ways for a few years now. Why can't it be time for another bit of a tweak or another bit of a change to what we've been doing? I think that's certainly called for. You hear a lot of coaches who don't like the rules or the lack of clarity, and I think that's just a big thing for fans, media, players, coaches, is you just never know. Like, what seems clear targeting, Arizona State game, is not targeting. It seemed like it was absolutely targeting, but it wasn't. You watch that game on another day and maybe even change the teams or whatever, that's targeting. With a different crew, that's targeting, right? So, like, that should not be the case. It should be, it's either that or it's not. It should be black and white, not different shades of gray. And I feel like we've been living in different shades of gray, and it's a flip of the coin on what crew you got and what game you got and where you got it and how that's going to be called, and that should not be the way it goes.
This is also I'll give you another example of other things. Like, when teams change conferences, there shouldn't be press conferences about what's a rule in one conference and what's a rule in the other conference. Like, it should be a rule across the way. Like, or is this a point of emphasis in all of this? Look, we sat here, Walt Anderson was in charge of the Big 12 officials for years, and I've been to a lot of games that Walt Anderson officiates in the NFL. I know the NFL kind of was a little bit like, okay, it's a Walt. We're going to call everything that looks like a holding. Like, Walt does not like holding. He hates it. So his crew, like the umpire and his crew, is like, if you're not calling, it's like a speed ticket quotient. If you're not calling these holdings, then we're going to get a new umpire who will, kind of a thing. And that's really just not how you should do it. You should officiate the game across the board the same. The other thing is, if you get rid of conference officials, then maybe you give your fans a bit of a reprieve from the guys that they maybe don't trust as much anymore.
Well, that's
and you
no.
But, okay, let me finish my thought. If you do that, if you send them somewhere else and they get some new officials, they have less to bitch about.
I am not going to make decisions on who my officials are based on some fan being upset about, well, he's from Tuscaloosa or something.
But if you can take,
you got to live somewhere.
But if you take that out of an equation, if you send the Tuscaloosa guy to Oregon occasionally, if he's not always doing the games in the conference,
well, okay, no, I get that. Shifting around.
Then you can eliminate that.
Baseball got away from having National League umpires at different strike zones and American League umpires.
If you have a crew that's mostly worked ACC games, if you start throwing them in the Big 12 a little bit,
who's going to pay for the travel and who's going to pay for all that? And football's got billions of dollars.
They have plenty of money. Okay. So who's going to pay for it? When it comes to who's going to pay for it in college football, that question's over. College football pay for it.
Tom Rucker, targeting is subjective. It's football. The hit by Tapp was face mask to face mask. He did not launch. He kept his head up, made the tackle. Now, Tom, I agree with you almost everything you said. The only part about the Tapp hit, if you'll notice, that even if he led with his face mask, there was connection just glanced. And that call, I would say, if it happened 40 times this year, was called targeting 38 times. Doesn't mean it should have been, but that, as you mentioned, though, it's subjective.
I think bigger picture, you can figure out the moving around of officials and the payments of it and all that. I think just the fact that every time there's a targeting call, none of us know what the hell it's going to be. Like, that specifically, yes, you're right, it's very subjective, but it should not be a total crapshoot, I feel like, every time you see it, of nobody in the room can agree on what it actually is. All these years later that we've been watching this, we still don't have a good idea when we watch it, and that's the problem to me. It's not so much debating a specific call. It's that if there was a targeting call like that in the next game, you're going to have 100 people in a room, and they'll have 12 different opinions. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the part where was it holding or was it not? Now, you'll have some people that will see a hold and say, nope, that wasn't by the definition, and will argue against it because they're a fan of the other team or whatever. But you're right, it's very subjective. I just feel like there should be a little bit more clarity and an ability to kind of know what you're watching and not be so confused by it the majority of the time you see that call made in games.
All right. Let's see. Someone said it's football. Let them play. Well, that's not going to happen because we mentioned the concussions. You can't sack the quarterback even high or low anymore. The low tackle is in the NFL, not in college. Just make it a yardage penalty. That's another response. Let's see here. There was one more. Go across the middle and accept the possibility of permanent brain damage. Yep, that's freaking genius.
Okay. Here, we've devolved into...
We've gone to a different conversation.
This is a different conversation. Our point isn't... Look, they just need to tell us what it is. And if it's any of these things, then that's what it is. But they're not. They're like... It's again, he's right. It is subjective because they've got to go to the replay and look at it. And then somebody's going, I guess. The other thing I think they need to do is... Sending the official over to the little video screen is a waste of time.
Oh, the NFL's the absolute best. Dude, they just call down, like, boom, it's done. They move on. Like, it's not even a thing. They don't even go to the camera. Like, it's done. And now, granted, they have a different setup. But before we go any further, this is not a conversation about whether targeting should exist. It's not a conversation about risk. It's just a conversation saying that, like, there should just be uniform rules across the board that if we're watching a game, we pretty much know if that's targeting or not. Not having a week-long debate on whether this one particular hit was targeting or not.
But don't we have that same debate on holding and pass interference and all that? Here's another thing. Paxton goes, it's football. Let him play. But Paxton against Georgia, Texas benefited from, like, I think 2, 3, or 4 targeting calls. And Georgia was, like, upset on the other side because they didn't know. They're leaning with the head, the leading with the head. That's not what we're talking about. I think that a lot of it could be fixed by having different levels of targeting. But it's impossible at the same time. These players are bigger, better, faster, and stronger than ever before. And just a minuscule half a second, a player can change his head angle and create targeting one way or the other. So I don't know if they can actually do anything about it, except we just bitch about it and argue about it and get upset about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, look, they just need to have some clarity. Clarity is a good thing. And also clarity allows you to admit, look, they need clarity, they need transparency, all these things will make it better. Have a director of officiating for the entire NCAA. Have the crew chief go talk to the pool reporter like you do afterwards, as opposed to, like, hiding them away when they don't have to answer for it. And yeah, and then letting, like, we'll know who the good crews are because of the ones in the playoffs. Right now, I don't know if the crew that I'm watching a bowl game and is a good crew or not. I just know that they're available.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I know.
Yeah, Paxton goes, you can tell if it's intentional or not. I don't think you can. I think there's some that are pretty obvious. I think there are some that are blatantly obvious. I don't think you can. I think the game is too fast for you to really tell whether somebody is intentionally. There are some where it's bad. The guy should be ejected, 15 yards, I don't know. But I think most of the targeting calls, 7 out of every 10 can go either way. And so whoever's one fan base or another, we're going to disagree. So, all right, there we are with that. But I do, a lot of you said you like what Mark said. After what Paul and Craig said after I read the statement, because I read it like, what was it, a week ago? Maybe longer. And I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't like all the whining about calls. But in this case, I wish they could fix it, but I don't know if they can.
I mean, for example, you have a bowl game, a major bowl game. It's Georgia versus Michigan. Well, here's a Big 12 crew. Why the hell is a random crew that's not called either of these teams calling this biggest game of the year? Like, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what doesn't make any sense.
Because they don't want a Big 10 or they don't want to.
I understand that. So how could you void that?
No.
Everybody's on the same. That's what Mark's talking about as much as anything. That's what the focus was. Not does targeting matter or should it be playing football or is it, like that. I understand how it gets into that in the side conversations, but that's really the main thing we started talking about here. And on that point, I totally agree with him that it should not be this wild card, particularly in big games. It's like, oh man, they drew the ACC crew. That means, like, it shouldn't mean anything. It shouldn't mean anything other than those guys just happen to be from the ACC. But it seems, different strokes for different folks depending on what crew you're talking about. And that should, especially in an expanded playoff field, in my mind, be eliminated and could be eliminated. But good luck getting any more bucks out of the grubby hands of the people in power in college athletics.
Yeah, I've said this before. We'll go to Bobby Taylor after this break, is that if you have a player that seems like, who was it that Baylor had? Was it Miller? Who was the defensive back that seemed like he got hit with targeting like 3 or 4 times in a year?
Chris Miller.
Chris Miller. I think if you get hit with those, and if you get hit with it multiple times, like one, the first game, I don't even care if it's blatant. I don't think you should be ejected. 15-yard penalty, okay, maybe you are for the rest of the game, but not carry it over, even if it's in the second half. The other part of it, if you get hit with 2 or 3 targeting calls, then a suspension needs to be a part of it. To me, that's and oh, by the way, targeting is not just to protect the ball carrier, it's also to protect the player making the tackle. So that's also the possibility to think about, too. I do wish there was one group. Baseball seems to be, I'm not saying that there's not controversial calls, but I saw a game yesterday, an NFL game yesterday, where it was like somebody rolled over on a body on a first down. It was like the Lions and Vikings. They got a call from the guy upstairs. First down. And it's nowhere. And the television monitors in college are always on the other side of the field.
Well,
why can't they be wireless in all the technology we have today? Why does it always have to be?
They're not making the call either. It's going to the command center. ACC. So the ACC command center in Charlotte and an ACC game is making that review. All they need to do is be like, "Hey, Herb, you've got targeting on 37, and the ball is going to be spotted at the 17-yard line."
Yeah, what is that guy? Well, yeah, I thought for a while that the official who's looking inside of that box was the one who was. Why does he have to see anything? If he's not making the call or the change in the call or confirming a call, why does he have to look inside that little box in the first place? All right, when we come back, former Notre Dame All-American, consensus All-American defensive back, former Seattle Seahawk and Philadelphia Eagle, Longview High's Bobby Taylor. He's next, and this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. They're down to a new month has opened up, and so they have an auction coming up on January the 9th. The Duvall family, TexasBeefHouse.com, farm-raised Angus cattle and Wagyu steaks, Wagyu beef, whether it's brisket or tri-tip or just delicious steaks, they have that available. Next auction, actually they moved it up to January the 8th. So you can go online, go to TexasBeefHouse.com, and then they have where you could visit Bid on Beef. That's who handles all of their auctions, and you can go in and start to look at what product they're going to make available and then get involved in the auction live online. Texas Beef House started this company just outside of Tyler and White House in 2017. Breed-specific ranch specializing in American Angus and Wagyu beef. Texas Beef House regularly posts Wagyu and Angus lots to bid on beef. I've been in them. Paul's been in them. Jack's been in them. Where you go in and you can buy beef, Angus and Wagyu beef, at the cost you want to pay. If it gets too high for some specific lot of, let's say, ribeyes or New York strip, walk away. Find another one. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, waiting on Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame All-American, consensus All-American at Notre Dame. Notre Dame making their run into the semifinals. Penn State, Notre Dame, the first game. Ohio State, Texas, the second game. By the way, congratulations to North Central Illinois. They won the Division III national title, beating Mount Union. You hear about how many games these guys are playing? The Youngstown States, the Mary Hardin Baylors, now North Central Illinois, the Mount Unions, among others. They've had to play 4 or 5 games for a long, long time to win a national title, on top of their schedule.
With far less money. So it was always bullcrap. It was always bullcrap.
Now, they don't play as many. I don't know how many games
they play one neutral site game.
They have like 10 games, and then they get into the tournament.
But they also have one neutral site game. Yeah, I think the next thing that you're going to see from the CFP, mostly because everybody's going to want it, is the on-campus games are going to expand, and they can't be sending people to 4 different locales.
All right, let's discuss that until we get Bobby set up and on the link. Craig, you brought this up as one of the conversations, the college football playoffs. Now that we're through the quarterfinal round and into the semifinals, what do you like about what we've seen?
I like that there's teams getting an opportunity that wouldn't have got it otherwise. I like that you're seeing teams get a crack at the national championship that wouldn't have gotten it with 2 or 4 teams. But I know we got Bobby now, so we'll pivot and
we'll
return
get into
to that.
We'll get into that. The number of games, or how many home campus games, or the ticket sales, or can fans go to 3 and 4 games and eat, no matter if they have a ton of money or not?
I will say on the ticket sales, I very vividly remember, I believe it was an Alabama fan at the time, who was just, you guys are insane. People are going to travel to watch their teams no matter what. And we're saying, like, well, there's probably some, like, rich Alabama donors that have private planes that'll probably jump around from place to place. Oh, they didn't get in the playoff this year, but when they do. But turns out people don't just have tons of money to just jump from town to town to town and watch 4 playoff games.
Tickets at the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, so, like, we were right on that ultimately, but we'll return to that.
No, it's like even Texas fans, as much money as they, and how many people did not like, chunks of people did not go to that game against Arizona State. He's a consensus All-American at Notre Dame. Bobby Taylor with his former NFL star, Longview High School. Go Lobos on 365 Sports. Good afternoon. Always going to call you a young man. How you been, buddy?
I'm good. How you all doing? I feel like we're a family. We've been knowing each other for so long.
Yeah, we have. I knew you when you were an ankle biter, I think, and all the way up through your great career and now as a businessman. So what's it like to have Notre Dame where they are, because it has been a while since they were really, truly in this position?
But it feels phenomenal. You know, I think they did a great job. I was talking to one of my good friends because I was actually at the playoff game because, you know, that was the first time a December game in South Bend. So it was a pretty big deal. So I made sure I was able to get back to campus. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to any other games at home this year. I did go to the Texas A&M game to start the season off, but just to be on campus, to see how electric it was, I felt like we kicked off the CFP playoff bracket. But I mean, it feels great. I mean, I feel like Brian, I feel like Coach Kelly did us a favor by jumping down to LSU. You know, no shot at him. You know, I don't have any ill will toward him, but it was, I think, a blessing in disguise. Marcus was already on the staff at the time, and so, you know, I was happy that the administration made the move, and it's definitely paid off so far. And just to experience that, to see the excitement, you know, we have our fingers crossed. Hopefully a good game on Thursday against Penn State. It's been a long time since we played that, you know, great program, a lot of history. I can remember games that I played against Penn State back in South Bend. So, you know, I think it's just a good time right now. I mean, we're excited. We like our chances. Another thing I noticed during the game last week against Georgia, you know, we were just as big as Georgia. We were just as fast or even faster than the Bulldogs. And, you know, we were very physical as well. And so when we can play that type of football, it puts you in a better position to be successful. The SEC, you know, they've been running things over the last 10 to 15 years when you think about the college football landscape. And so that was a huge victory for us. But, you know, hopefully the guys have put that behind them, and looking forward to Thursday's game. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Do you see parallels between the vibe around the team that you did when you were there under Lou Holtz, where there was a intimidation factor with Notre Dame back when you played there? And I think that for the large part, even though they've had some good teams, was not there anymore. But man, I do not want to line up across from these dudes. They absolutely do not care about your physical well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that starts with the big guys up front, offensively and defensively. And they play nasty. They get dirty. And, you know, they're up in guys' faces. They're challenging each other. I was able to listen to a couple of the pregame speeches, specifically the offensive line, and just hearing, you know, how passionate they were. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that they said, but it made me get goosebumps. And so I think you hit the nail on the head when you think about some of the teams I was fortunate enough to play with. And, you know, I think we've been able to build a team that can travel, that can play against Big Ten teams, that can play against SEC teams. And so I like our chances moving forward.
You know, you mentioned that you maybe, I don't know if you said for the first time in a while, but that they were just as physical looking, like guys get off the bus as good as Georgia. And that's with the SEC, of course. They're linemen, especially their defensive linemen. They're just like unbelievable players, and that's why they've won so many national titles too. But yeah, I mean, what was that like for you? Is that like kind of just a cool feeling that, my God, we're back where we should be?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, listen, the eye test means something. I mean, on every level of football. And so when your guys look like the guys, or you're even bigger than the guys that are on the other sideline, I mean, sometimes that doesn't necessarily win the game for you, but it definitely puts you in the right mindset. And we definitely have the skill guys as well. Some of our guys can just go probably right to the track and run track. And so that means a lot. I mean, a lot of times some people may think that, that doesn't mean anything. BS. That means a whole lot, especially when you can pass the eye test.
Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame consensus All-American, with us on 365 Sports.
I know that he hasn't been able to play much because of his injury, but Benjamin Morrison, he's kind of a Bobby Taylor type. Big, long, tall cornerback, not one of these little guys. Get up in your grill. What do you think about him?
Oh, I think he's a first-round pick. It's unfortunate that he hadn't been able to be out there on the field, but that just shows the depth of our team in general. And so, I'm looking forward to all those guys playing. We've been able to win a lot of the turnover battles in each game, and so we can continue to do that in Thursday's game. I like our chances again.
All right, you brought up that opening game when they hammered Indiana and made them like it. And Indiana, and in the end, it was not like a 46-3, but it might as well have been. And you played there, you'd been there, you were recruited there. How would you compare that atmosphere to back when you were trying to decide where you were going to go to college and then playing there?
You know what? That's a great question, and you probably won't believe this, but like prior to so playing all three sports in high school, I think that prepared me for what I was in store for when I went to Notre Dame. But prior to my visit, which wasn't during football season, like a lot of kids are able to visit during the season, I never went to a Notre Dame game prior to any of that. So I didn't experience it. But what I do know is that the atmosphere is just so electric, and it was almost like, I guess, being in high school again when that first time you're able to really go to a pep rally, that first time you're able to not even play in a varsity football game, but just watch it from the stands as a freshman. And so I had all of those feelings, and a lot of the guys that I was around, we had that same feeling. And actually what we did, one of my good friends who lives in South Bend, we stay in constant contact with our former coach, Coach Lou Holtz, and we were able to call Coach. So we had a pregame party before the game. So we were able to call Coach Holtz, and it was probably about 20 or 30 people in the room. We put it up on the screen, and, he just kind of gave us some words of wisdom, almost like giving us a pep rally to go to be the best fans that we could be, to help the young men out there be successful in the game. And so just being able to experience like all of that, it just reminds you of how special college football is.
Bobby, there are 4 teams left. They're all blue bloods: Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and of course, Ohio State. In the end, that's the way it always is. There are, though, and Craig brought this up while we were coming on with you, it was neat to see teams get their first opportunity, whether it's Boise State. Arizona State had a team back in the late 90s with Jake Plummer, and even back before then. But to give them a chance, what would that, you think, be like for schools now that otherwise don't get that eye test? They are never going to win that eye test, but they get a chance to win it all.
I love it. And you know what? I'm not sure if those institutions won't ever have the same eye test, because, when you think about all of the new rules, NIL, a lot of these schools, they have, deep pockets when you think about some of the donors that have come from some of these, fine institutions all over the country. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that, those teams won't ever have some of the bigger players, the faster players, as, some of these blue bloods that you just spoke about. But just to be able to see those teams play, I mean, they a lot of those teams, I followed SMU, I followed Boise as well, especially with the running back. I think he's definitely a pro and will have a great professional career whenever he decides. But, I loved it. And I think, a lot of the people that are the naysayers that are having some of the complaints, I mean, if it was another way, they probably would have some complaints as well. But, I think the CFP did a great job with some of the teams that they put in, and then obviously some of the teams that they left out. I mean, that happens. And so, I mean, for example, just think about Georgia. Georgia, they were left out last year. But one of the things I will say about Georgia, even though we beat them this past week, I liked how being left out last year and then going to the bowl game, and I forgot they played, was it Florida State or somebody, and the way that they showed up, that just let me know a lot about the culture there at the university. I have a lot of my peers, that went to the University of Georgia, and we were going back and forth all last week. But I mean, I like the state of college football right now. I read an article, I don't know if it was over the weekend, where the NCAA is thinking about adding a 5th year of eligibility. And I think that would be great as well, because, the college football is probably the best football outside of Texas high school football that you can probably ever experience, in my opinion.
Bobby, Riley Leonard is one of my favorite players to watch. When you are, and look, I don't know what his professional future is. I have no idea. I mean, I couldn't tell you that. But what I do know is that if I was any one of those other guys on the team and I watched a guy playing out there like that, it would fire me up. What are your thoughts on him and the way that his style of play just has that team just at any moment just so ready to go for whatever happens next?
Oh, I mean, I love it. I mean, that one play where he scrambled out to the left and he just threw his body up in the air and, got that first down for us. I mean, I just love to see a leader, someone that hadn't even been on campus probably 12 months, to take on the role that he's been able to take on, especially coming into a program like the University of Notre Dame, playing quarterback there. It's almost like being, I think, a quarterback, on the NFL level as far as the scrutiny and exposure that you afforded. And so I think he's totally embraced it. And another thing I like about him is, he's a multiple sport athlete. I mean, I saw some footage where he was throwing down 360 dunks and all of those types of things on the basketball court. And so he's definitely an athlete, and I like what he brought to the table. I know that there were some, things about what he only had, 90 yards passing or something like that. Listen, we got the victory. That's the only thing that mattered. When we needed him to make some big plays, and I know if I'm an opposing team's defensive coordinator, I'm definitely putting a star on him to say, hey, this guy can beat you. You better respect him. Look at this film. And so I'm happy that he's a part of and being on our team right now.
One more thing, Bobby, we appreciate it. We mentioned what it was like to be a part of it and where they are now. How frustrating have these last 30 years been?
It's been very frustrating because, I feel like we had 2 legitimate chances there when I was there. The 3 years that I was on campus to really win a national championship. I can remember we beat Florida State one year when they had Charlie Ward as a quarterback. He won the Heisman. Then the following week we lost to Boston College and didn't get a chance to play those guys in a rematch. But it's been very frustrating just because I know how much that place has meant to me and how special it's been as part of, my growth, not only on the field as a football player, but off the field as well. And I'm also just happy that, folks from around the country is getting to see a part of the Notre Dame culture. I feel like it's a, special place on and off the field.
Bobby, the best high school athlete I ever covered. In all 44 years I've been doing it, and there's no question there's some that were good at all the various sports, but no one played it at the level you did when you were at Longview High School, and then, of course, what you did in college in the NFL, and as a businessman, too. So it's great to see your face, man. You haven't aged at all.
Thank you. I've always loved and respect you, Smokey. I mean, you're an institution, not only in our state of Texas, but probably all over the country. Just the passion you showed for so many years. And like I said earlier, I feel like we're family. We've been knowing each other. And when I saw you calling, and I was actually on the call early, I'm like, I wish I could answer at the time, but I couldn't. But anytime you want to invite me on, feel free. I love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
Last time I saw you was in Tampa at the Super Bowl, I think
Yep.
it was, during the COVID year. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Bobby. As always, you do great at everything, and that's awesome in many ways. Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame All-American, consensus All-American on the Irish, and back in the spotlight in the semifinals Thursday against Penn State.
I wish I felt bad for that 93 thing, but I don't.
No, yeah, no, you don't.
I like Bobby a lot, but I'm sorry, I don't.
No. And here's the thing about it is that when you have a team like that one, or the 1-13 with Jameis or whatever, man, hope you cherish that, because you never know when all of a sudden things just aren't very good, no matter what your favorite program might be. Ohio State has really never – no, we got a break because Phil Bennett's ready. We'll go to Phil Bennett. Get into the teams that are in there, and have they ever had long droughts? Yeah, they have. But where they are now, a chance to play for a national title. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. And, of course, they just wrapped up an end-of-the-year event with what they have when it comes to the greatness of Ram trucks. The name speaks for itself. What they have when it comes to the Wagoneer Series, the SUV that is just spectacular, the Grand Cherokees, too, and, of course, a bunch of pre-owned cars, hundreds of cars on the lot available to you. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teagues, the general manager and CEO, David Gray in charge of new car sales, and they are there ready to help you if you need a new car to start the year. If you didn't get one at the end of the year when they had even greater incentives, now is the time. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
47 years coaching college football. There's our guy, Phil Bennett, on with us a little bit earlier than normal.
Which is amazing because he's only 49 years old.
Yeah. Hey, was Bobby Taylor, well, we know how good he was. Did you ever try and get him?
He came out what year, Smokey? What year did he come out Longview?
I want to say in the early 90s, like 92, 93, something like that. Yeah.
I was at LSU, and I talked to Bobby, and, he committed very early to Notre Dame, and obviously has done well, very well spoken, and he was a heck of a player.
A phenomenal athlete, no question. You have 4 blue bloods, Phil. Notre Dame and Penn State, almost like mirror images in some ways, even the way they dress and all that. And then, of course, what Ohio State's been able to do in UT with the huge win against Arizona State. these seem to be the teams that have been the most consistent in this tournament. A couple of them have gotten fortunate, but your thoughts about where we are?
Well, listening to Bobby, I would agree with a lot of what he said, but, Notre Dame has had a long drought and really haven't ever played to the level in big games that they did last week. And so that was huge that they could go in and play, in New Orleans in front of an SEC crowd and play at that level. I think that it was impressive. I think, one of the things I was not surprised about was the Oregon-Ohio State game. I think we talked about it last week. I think Oregon has been suspect on defense all year. I thought they were suspect last year. Penn State had I think I'm right on this. Penn State had over 600 yards offense and just turned the ball over too much in the Big Ten championship game, or they would have beaten Oregon. So, obviously you've got to think about Ohio State. It wasn't but a month ago they were wanting to fire everybody on the staff, and Michigan went in and truly dominated them in their own stadium. Texas got by on a prayer, probably a no call, got them to this game. But I think all things balance out. I think that they're probably the best four teams left.
Yeah, I wanted your thoughts on Cam Scatteraboo in that game for sure, Coach. And what, with a player like him, you can only stop him for so long. The more they give him the ball, the more he's going to punish you. And so from a defensive coordinator standpoint, what is it like when you're like, can we just not see him for a minute? Just a minute, can you not give him the ball?
Paul, the first thing I noticed in the game, Texas was sort of plugging their linebackers, which I thought was a great idea. It didn't give him time. He had to make a very quick cut, and it made him go lateral very quick. Well, I don't know if you noticed that. They quit doing that. And when they started letting him, and he started, first of all, when he started getting a little bit hot, he was bouncing everything. He was going inside, and the ball bounced, and they were losing the leverage. Then he got going, and it really didn't matter. His balance and his vision was just too good for him. And he was so in tune of where he was going, where the cut was. And they say he's not fast, but he looked, I don't know what y'all thought, but I thought he looked fast to me.
Yeah, he did. He did to me.
He looked plenty fast to me. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what did you think of that targeting, I guess, debacle, if you will, Coach? Obviously, if you're a Texas fan, you feel like, hey, it's the game of football, let them play. If you're an Arizona State fan, you feel screwed royally. What do you think?
Craig, I'm like Kenny said. I guess I don't know what targeting is.
Right.
I mean, I say that sincerely. I think it's right now, two things happen in these games, and it just burns my ass up, is that we get officials that try to control the game, or we get officials who won't make a call. I thought that one of the reasons I didn't feel like it was not called is because on Arizona State's interception, that could have been targeting also. It was almost identical hit. Face-to-face. There wasn't any real launching. It was sort of a bam-bam. I don't think that Taft, projectiled into him. So I think that's probably why it wasn't called. Could it have been called? Absolutely, it could have been.
Oh, yeah.
What from the calls that I have seen. Now, it's just it was a fortunate thing for Texas. Now, I will also say this. I thought, the longer Arizona State stayed in the game, the stronger they got. Texas has fast guys. They couldn't come close to tackling that quarterback. And I found out later, a friend of mine's a defensive coordinator at Arizona State. They said he's 4.4 or low 4.5s. And I thought that they played their way back in to win the game, and it was a tough loss.
Yeah, it was brutal, but I think with as young of a coach as Dillingham is, like, that's an exciting program moving forward that I think will be a lot of fun to follow. Now, on the flip side, Texas does get the win. How do you feel about them going up against the quote-unquote hottest team in the country in Ohio State, and it's in Arlington and all this and that, but just based on how you've seen them play in the first win and now this next round against Arizona State, beating Clemson in that first win, what stands out about the Longhorns, good, bad, or ugly?
Craig, the first thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to underestimate them. You look at their season after taking a pretty good beating by Georgia. Everybody said, oh, they're not physical. They're not this. I went to the A&M game, and they are physical, and they are well coached. And they do have players. I think, truthfully, that they're a team that sort of plays to the level they need to play. And I say that as a compliment. I watched them throughout the year. I remember one of the games sitting out here on my patio. I watched them against Kentucky. And they let Kentucky sort of stay in the game with them. And I'm telling these A&M people, I said, I think we can play with them. I think we can play. We couldn't. But it was obvious. They dominated the front. Their receivers were faster. Their quarterback was better. Their running game was going that night. I go back to when I was the head coach at SMU, and they played USC. At the time, and Smokey, you remember this, USC was almost unapproachable. They were so good.
Yep.
I'd played them. We had beat them out there when I was at K-State. One of the years they were like 11-1 or 11-2. We had beat them, but they had ended up, and they had, of course, the great running tandem, Matt Leinart, and they were good on defense. And Texas goes out there, and everybody thought that they were going to get dominated in the Rose Bowl, and they find a way to win. I just think they're a team that plays to the level they need to play. Now, I am impressed, like everyone else, with Ohio State. I did watch their Michigan game that proved that they could have an off game. I watched them also against Penn State in a very tight game. I think they're going to go. They're good on defense. Their quarterback has to be on. He was not on versus Michigan, and I've watched him when he was at K-State. He has never beaten Texas. And you sit there and say, well, that shouldn't mean anything. Well, sometimes you get something in your head, that's like playing golf, Smokey. When you had never beat somebody.
Oh, yeah.
When you've got to par that last hole to win, something gets a little bit tighter than other players, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. Hey, you mentioned that USC-Texas game, which the Vince Young game is what a lot. Reggie Bush, Lendell White, and Matt. That was perhaps the greatest single game performance of all time, and plus what he did to bring them back to get within the chance to get the fourth. Where would you put Vince Young among all the players that you ever, while you were coaching, coached against or scouted, and who else would be if there was three names? Because you never faced Tommy Frazier, did you?
No. The one that won the Heisman, we beat at
Crouch.
Crouch.
Yeah.
We beat Crouch. Someone was talking about Riley Leonard. I personally, I don't see Riley being a number one draft pick, that type of guy. But he is a outstanding All-American quarterback, a la Charlie Ward, one of those special guys that might not be a first-round draft pick. I think Vince Young was all those things, but he was a draft pick. And I think he will tell you. He ended up being Rookie of the Year, I think, and got it going. He's a play waiting to happen. And then he got some I have a friend that was on the Titans at that time. He got some bad advice, and we all know sometimes when you get bad advice, you end up getting injured and then had a bad run there. But he's as talented that's ever been through Texas or maybe college football.
Yeah, his natural instinct, ability, looked like he was hardly running, but he was always running away from somebody.
I know what you're talking about. The play that he scored, they had a great pressure on, and it looked like he just floated to the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
And the game was over. And he was Greg Davis, the offensive coordinator there with Mac, was a dear friend of mine. We started coaching at A&M together. And Greg said he had an it factor of being such a competitor that that the will to win was uncanny.
How do you feel about I guess it's an online conversation going on, but it's all over the college football shows, I guess, as well, about the long layoff and how that might affect. I feel like that's entirely a reaction to Georgia not being in any longer and kind of coming up with a reason as to why it's not the teams that people expected rather than something else.
Let's be honest, Greg. Everybody's pissed off because the SEC,
Right.
doesn't have a blue blood in it, as you said. Wouldn't you agree with that, Smokey?
Yeah, Texas.
You don't have Florida, you don't have Alabama, you don't have Tennessee,
Georgia.
I remember. I think I told you one time. Spurrier told me a story about. He said, "Yeah." I said, "How you think A&M?" We're at the Waldorf Astoria. I said, "How you think A&M will do in the SEC?" He goes, I'm glad they're in our league. He says they'll never be a blue bud. He said, but they'll be right there with Ole Miss and Arkansas, and Mississippi State. That's how he said it.
He was right,
and they mean it. And I think that's the way it is. You've got Alabama, you got Georgia, you got Tennessee, you got LSU, you got Florida. Those are the people that are going to rule.
And then, of course, you add Oklahoma, even though they weren't very good, what Texas is doing right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's mostly just an excuse for them not being there. But can you speak to just long layoffs and the difficulty of that, or is it easier to navigate than maybe people think that it is? Just the idea of having these 5 weeks off and then having to play and all that jazz.
I think that's a little bit too long. I do. You've got and nowadays school's different. Hell, these kids hardly go to class. Everything's online. So keeping them corralled is probably harder now than it was back then. Plus, think about this, Greg. They got money in their pocket now.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I was doing it, we had those long, you finish your season at the end of November. You don't play till January the 1st. Hell, nobody had money. You were trying to get Christmas money. Now they got more than the coaches.
I remember when I got paid to do a radio show on campus, I wanted enough money to play Pac-Man and go eat pizza and drink maybe a beer. That was it. That's about Phil, on the layoff, if you were a coach, and now you have teams that have 4 teams who have a longer layoff. It used to be that way, 5 games, 5 weeks or so when you won a Big 12 or an SEC, and then you played the national title game because you just played one postseason game.
Right.
You would never say, no, I want to play in the first round rather than have a first round bye, would you?
No.
Never.
No.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
And I think the way it fell, you got to remember, this is the first of all first. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to judge it with.
Yeah.
The layoff guys were 0-4. The conference championships, correct me if I'm wrong, were 0-5. So, all that, a pattern hadn't been set yet. And I think we all want to throw our 2 cents in. This is wrong. That's wrong. The only thing wrong right now with college football is they got a problem with a portal, and they have a calendar problem. These kids and these coaches, the accountability of being at a place, I'm concerned more about that stuff than I am the playoffs, because there's some issues going on, and it's going to be interesting to see who takes charge to get these things squared away.
The AFCA is going to have their meetings this weekend. That's when I first saw you after you had been hired by Art, so that's coming up. But I don't know if anyone has enough clout to get anything done. Craig, did you have another one for Coach?
Yes, Coach, we saw Baylor fall to LSU last week, and I'm really asking this question not so much about that game, although feel free to riff on that if you want, but they made a couple of coaching moves today. They're moving on from cornerbacks coach Kevin Curtis, who's basically been here with Aranda since day one, and also outside linebackers coach Caleb Collins. I'm just asking you in general, was there anything on that particular side of the ball that are you at all surprised by those moves? And did you see anything specifically maybe on that back end, the outside linebackers or the cornerbacks that stood out to you, and you see where Aranda's coming from here with these moves?
Craig, I've known Kevin Curtis since he played at Texas Tech. I've watched him coach. He's an excellent coach. He's a product of a season that sort of went up and down. I don't know the other guy. I've always said this, coaches have to make tough decisions. Kevin's a big boy. He'll get a job. He is a good coach. I don't think he has to leave here being shameful of anything. I don't know the linebacker coach. I just knew he was young and sort of new at it.
Yeah.
I don't fault Dave for making changes. The thing that you always have to remember is secondary play is the hardest thing to play on the field. I mean, you're backpedaling, and you've got the fastest players on the field in your face, and you've got to find a way to defend them. Now, the best way to defend them is to get after that quarterback. Mm-hmm. And what did you not see Baylor do in the bowl game?
They could not get to the quarterback.
They did not touch the quarterback against an offensive line that had never played. Maybe that layoff they had all year, they were really fresh. What do you think about that, Smoak?
Yeah, the LSU look good, and that's a lot of them, as you said, they're backups. But that's also how deep they are, and you wonder if they're playing the right guys sometimes. They missed the receiver, obviously, but they had plenty of them, man. They did. They're not lacked for that.
I didn't think Baylor pressured. I think that they left there were some matchup issues, but I will say this about the game. Baylor should have won that game. I mean, when you have a quarterback, the thing that was disappointing, we weren't able to get our running game on track. 2.9 yards a carry. Mm-hmm. They're not a great rushing team at all, and they averaged over 4. Obviously, the kickoff return, and then the pick six. They couldn't ever get the thing right. Now, it looked like to me, everybody sent me the pictures of the Hawkins kid. I mean, obviously that was a touchdown. I don't know how they came back and said, it wasn't. I thought at that time in the game that was huge, but I just think defensively they let him get away from him and not running the ball. I really felt they were a better team that day, but like you said, offensively LSU did some things that won the game for them.
I think if they don't snap the ball over Sawyer's head, they win that game.
It was crazy. I agree with you. That was a backbreaker. What happened? Were they on silent count? Is that what they said?
We didn't get a chance. I don't think there was ever a post game when I remember Sawyer Robertson was in it. It's not like when they had the breakout sessions.
Right.
I don't think was he really?
He was in 2 or 3 of them.
Well, he wasn't in this one. So we didn't get a chance to talk to him about that. And Aranda was not going to probably have any information on that other than what last thing, Mac Brown joined us on Friday. And as you know now in retirement, and you guys are the ones that sent him there, sent him out of Texas because you beat him in 10, 11, and I guess 12, 13. Your thoughts about guys like you, Mac Brown, Nick Saban, why can't they allow some of you to get into a room and try to help straighten all this crap out, or would they even listen to you?
Well, the first question I asked you, who is they? Are you talking about the NCAA?
Yeah, that's a great question. Or would it be Greg Sankey, the Big Ten?
Well, I think, right now in college football, you have people that are not informed. The coaches have no representation. Back when I first started coaching, we had a group called CFA. And Chuck Ninus was the president. And Chuck Ninus was the most powerful person in college football. I'm thinking seriously, and I say this with all things, and I've talked to a lot of people, from agents to ADs. This thing's either going to get changed fast or the NCAA is not going to have a Power 4 conference. They're going to be a break-off. I believe that. Because they know, the coaches know it's out of control. It's got to be the way they do it. The paying has got to be balanced and mandated, and they've got to get a calendar that these players and these coaches have a life. These coaches are working 12 months a year. There's going to be, I'm telling you, the ones that are going to benefit this are these lawyers, because these wives are going to divorce these coaches. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
people are leaving. They don't, and you know what? We can't keep letting the players run the program. One of the things I've always said as a coach, we've got to save the players from themselves, and it's happening right now. We've got to make it right, get it arranged right. Hey, I'm not against the compensation, but make it even where you don't have the marquee programs taking everything. Make it even, make it balanced, and get the calendar right where their calendars is fair and good. Education can still be got, and then the coaches can have some balance in their lives.
One of the arguments against that from those who follow the game, whether it's fans or others, or even those who represent the players, is, yeah, but the coaches can do whatever they want. Why can't we now? Because that's basically what's happening, right?
But do you that's what we just lo and behold, the country just said, hey, we got to have a switch from that wokeness. I mean, you can't let people that are unqualified to make decisions do the things we're doing right now, because it starts pandemonium. And we have to set that, there's a reason that we have rules and regulations, and it's not to please everybody. I mean, you and God knows you and I grew up in a time where, you know what, you did what you were told, and it's time to somewhat get back to that.
Yeah, I don't know if the hay's out of the barn, if they'll ever be able to get it back in the barn.
Oh yeah, they can get it back.
Okay.
They can get. Hey, let me tell you something. It's amazing what you can do when you just mandate it. If they love football the way they say they do, and the passion, yes, we can. We can get it back. Now, what I'm saying is, though, too, and still make sure they have the opportunity of earning what they are right now.
Yeah, I think the problem, then they'll get sued, though.
By force, you got 5 players that are going to play at 4 universities. Now, how stupid is that?
Hey, I'll give you one here, Phil. TJ Finley, who's going to Tulane.
Yeah.
5th school. He went to LSU. He went to Auburn. He went to Texas State. He went to Western Kentucky, and now he's at Tulane.
And where has he ever been a factor? Anywhere.
The best season he had was at Texas State last year before Western Kentucky.
Yeah, he's the one that riddled Baylor as the quarterback.
And then they got rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They got it. They moved on to somebody else. Hey, man, appreciate it. Are you out? You got any warmers out there where you are on that back porch?
Look, I'm sitting in front of my fireplace outside.
Oh, golly, you're the best, man. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it, Coach.
All right.
Phil Bennett, long time, 47 years in college football with us on 365 Sports. We appreciate his time. When we come back, Cedric Golden, Austin American Statesman on UT and the semifinals and more. And this is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Dr. Rob Maxey and his partners. What an incredible business. And it's for you. Oh, yeah, it's a business. Don't think that they're not a business that wants to make money. That's what they're there for. But seriously, what they do for you, the patient or customer, is incredible. $497 or less is what it will cost you to get an ideal, to get an MRI, state-of-the-art imaging machine. I have been inside that business. I've been inside their business probably 8 to 10 times, 4 times as a patient. Every single time, it was a very comfortable And in some cases, for someone like me that can get spooked by being in an enclosed area like an MRI machine, I can get spooked by that. Not with them. Their texting specialists just make it feel so much better than when I've been in a couple of other places. $497. That'll help you talk about how much it's worth it. And every single time I've been able to get a call or some sort of portal with images and a report on what they saw, whether it's been my shoulder, whether it's been my lower back, whether it's been my hip, or even my abdomen. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, $497 or less at idealmri.com.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Cedric Golden, Austin American statesman. We had Bobby Taylor on Cedric earlier, and I've known him since, the late 80s when he was a great player at Longview, and then, of course, I've known you since you were 5. Great to see you. I saw this quote you had on a show that you don't think many fans around the SEC are cheering on Texas to win in the college football playoff. That's a conference that usually likes to promote how good they are in certain ways, but you still think they're kind of the black sheep?
Of course, David. They just got here, and who pulls against the new guy that just comes in and gets to the championship game? I know the Aggies ain't pulling for him, Smoak. The Texas Longhorns did in 12 games what the Aggies couldn't do in 13 years. So they'll chant SEC if Texas wins. But if Texas gets run by Ohio State, the other teams will not be shedding any tears.
Cedric, this is a team that, there were a lot of people, I guess, surprised that they didn't blow Arizona State out or that it came down to the end. But it looked to me in that game that that's just who they are. It may not be spectacular, but they're just good. They're just really good, and they are deep enough and experienced enough to when it matters at the end, they can close it out, unless they're playing a team from Georgia.
Exactly. And the thing is, Paul, they can get away with that against Clemson. They can get away with that against A&M. I don't think they can get away with that against Ohio State. You can't go to sleep in the second and third quarter and try to steal it in overtime against Ohio State. If that happens, you might be down by 21 points. So the defense has to play better. They gave up 23 unanswered points. to Arizona State. Now, that does count the opening 7 points of overtime, but still, they gave up. That's the most they've given up since Georgia beat them in Austin. They were up 23-0 at the half. So what they're going to have to do is start fast and finish drives, and most importantly, they've got to limit the big plays. How about this stat, guys? In the last 2 playoff games, Texas has given up 5 passes of 25-plus yards in the fourth quarter of those games. In the last 2 games, they've given up 12 passes of 20-plus yards, and in the previous 5 games, they gave up 12. So, yeah, they've got leakage, and they've got to fix that.
Cedric, I know that you're probably aware of Arizona State, maybe even watched them a couple times prior to that game, but with whatever knowledge you rolled into that one with, what did you feel like walking out about Kenny Dillingham, Cam Scatterbo, and just that Arizona State program?
Craig, I'm going to tell you, the Big 12 better be aware. I mean, if they, Scatterbo's going to go pro, but those guys play hard. And that quarterback's a freshman. Sam Levitt is a freshman. And so he's going to get recruits there. They're going to want to live in that area. It's a nice area of the country. And they're in play in the Big 12. And they're going to play their games in the South. That's all good recruiting tools for Dillingham. And he does not coach scared. I loved how he approached that game. He didn't make excuses for Scatterbo saying he was the best running back in the country. He backed him up. He didn't make excuses for Sam Levitt when he said he was going to be the best quarterback on the field against Texas. And Sam Levitt represented. So that's a program on the rise. And Texas is very fortunate that Quinn Ewers has that clutch gene, or else you're probably not even talking to me today.
No, you're probably right, unless we're talking about, oh, my God, what happened and what's next. And I wanted to bring that up because Quinn Ewers may not be the most popular quarterback on the roster because of what people think of Arch and what they've seen a glimpse of him and just the story. Did this set him up for a legacy if they can win? They got 2. My goodness, they still have to beat all. But did that game and that moment set him up for a bigger legacy than he had in the first place?
I think so. Because Major Applewhite never won the Big 12. Chris Sims never won the Big 12. And he won the Big 12 and got to a championship game back-to-back 12-win seasons. He's got 27 wins as a starter. And if they win 2 more, he's going to go down as the 3rd winningest quarterback in Texas history and only the 5th one to win a championship. So like him or not, he's not the biggest quote machine. He might not throw the best deep ball. I think Arch Manning throws a better deep ball. But Quinn Ewers is a boss. And those guys believe in Quinn Ewers. And when the quarterback has the belief of a locker room and a head coaching staff, then they're going to be in games. And Steve Sarkisian came out last week and said, "Oh yeah, we're a massive underdog, and people aren't giving us a chance." You're a 7-point underdog. Steve Sarkisian believes Texas is going to win this game. I know him. He believes they're going to win this game.
I think that sometimes they're the most dangerous, even though they are Texas and a lot of times favored. They have had that drought. But I think that they're for whatever reason, a program, if you look at their history, when they're not a favorite, like USC, many times other teams, they seem like that's when they might play even loose and free.
Absolutely. And think about last year, Smokey. They went into Alabama and scored 21 points in the fourth quarter at Bryant-Denny Stadium. No one does that. And Tide was 52-1 at home in their last 53 going into that. And Quinn Ewers threw 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter in a raucous atmosphere in the SEC's one of the most hallowed palaces in the conference. And that was his debut, and he's been good ever since. I really think the fearlessness of Quinn Ewers is going to play to his favor. And this defense, much maligned lately, they have gotten the message. They got to play better, Smoak. If the defense plays like they played the first 10 games, this is a fourth quarter game, and Texas will have a really good chance to win.
Cedric, I'm going to ask you your theory on where Quinn Ewers is playing next year. Is it the NFL? It doesn't feel like it'll be Austin, Texas, or is it another college team?
I heard that Smoak was going to give him like $8 million to move to Waco. I mean, that's what I heard. I mean, and I'm like, this $8 million. Smoak's got way more money than $8 million. Make it 10, Smoak. Don't be cheap.
Yeah.
This is no time to be cheap. So Dave Aranda could use him for sure. I think he's going to go pro. Now, if it's me, and it's true that there's some $6 million offers on the table to be the guaranteed starter, and to be in college for another year, work towards your master's, it'd be hard for me to turn that down. $6 million is $6 million. I think he's going to go in the second round of the draft, and there ain't going to be no $6 million paycheck there.
By the way, my money is going to pay Sawyer Robertson to come back and have another year or two for Baylor. They're just fine.
He's great.
Cedric Golden, Austin American Statesman, with us on 365 Sports. Craig?
Said we got to see Trey Wisner, here at Connolly, and really enjoyed covering him. He was amazing then. You could see all of the potential oozing out of him. I know the running game was tough sledding this past week, but your thoughts on just his emergence, how he's come out of his shell a little bit there in Austin, and just the running game that Texas has right now. Your thoughts heading into this game against the Buckeyes?
Greg, I love him because the one thing about Quintravian, and they call him Trey, but his mama told us we got to call him Quintravian, and I'm not going against any black mother says Quintravian. His mama called him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay. So Quintravian Wisner is a leaning forward, run finishing power back who's got a little bit of speed on top of that, and he catch the ball. He was running fourth string before the season, and they lost C.J. Baxter and freshman Christian Clark to ACL injuries. That moved him up the pecking order, and then he beat out Jaden Blue, who had some fumble problems. If they can get him established, that's where everything else falls into place, because he is one of those guys. The first guy is not going to bring him down. The first guy's not going to get him. He's one of those guys who's always finishing runs. He's the barometer of this offense. It's not Quinn Ewers. It's Quintravian Wisner. He's the barometer. If he's rolling early, the Texas Longhorns are going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, and they could not run the ball against Arizona State after they shredded Clemson. We saw him, as Craig said, as a sophomore. He was a spindly, fast-as-hell kid that when he got any kind of opening, it was like going through a bullet hole. But he wasn't very physical. He was young. He hadn't really done – and then he's just turned into a grown-ass man.
And every team needs a guy like that. He's the guy that when Texas is playing on all cylinders, when that offense is rolling and they get up in the fourth quarter and there's 5 or 6 minutes left, they give it to him. It's ground chuck, and he runs the clock out. They weren't able to do that against Arizona State. They tried, and they just decided we just got to pass the ball. We can't run it on them. And that's what allowed Arizona State to get back in the game. I think Ohio State's got a better defense than Arizona State, and it's going to be interesting to see how much Steve Sarkisian leans on that run early, or if he just abandons it and says, all right, let's see if you can cover the talented wide receivers. Let's see if we can cover Gunnar Helm over the middle. I don't think they want to get in a shootout. Even though Will Howard, I mean, they just need to turn him into K-State Will Howard. I mean, I don't know who that guy is. They were 3-0 against the Will Howard I remember. He's dealing right now. I mean, in my last column, I used a basketball analogy. They're making all the threes, and Will Howard is Steph Curry. And so they need to get somebody on Will because he's on a heater.
Yeah. Somebody told Will Howard and Ryan Day that Emeka Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith exist. Like, hey, let's
just throw it near them.
Yeah. Get it close.
Well, Paul, the best idea I've come up with, and I know Texas is not going to do it, but since we're on 365 Sports in front of about 6 million viewers on YouTube, I need to get paid. This is what they should do, guys. They should show up at Jerry World in maize and blue. That will destroy Ryan. He will faint at midfield before the coin toss, and Texas will win by 4 touchdowns. That's what they need to do. Don't worry about blowout money, Del Conte. That money will be there for the championship game. Imagine how many maize and blue Longhorn jerseys they could sell if they beat Ohio State.
Hey, Michigan will send you the jerseys tomorrow.
Yeah.
They will make sure. They don't want Ohio State to have any joy.
Hey, Cedric, I didn't want to ask you.
Yes, Craig.
Yeah, no, I know it's been a few days, but you've got to experience that first playoff game there in Austin, and I was just wondering what that was like. You've covered so many games there, but was there something a little different to that one with Clemson in town and just the stakes being what they were?
Bro, there was so much buzz in the air. I mean, there more buzz than usual, and it's Austin, so there's lots of buzz going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was more buzz than usual, and they got there pretty early, and they were ready to roll. I think the first 2 rounds need to be on college campuses, because I'm telling you, at Atlanta in the Peach Bowl, there were 5,000 or 6,000 empty seats, but at the SEC championship game, there were no empty seats. I think if they made the first 2 rounds home games and expanded the bracket to 14 teams and did like the NFL and give 2 teams byes, I think they would have record attendance numbers in the second round. I think that's the next step.
Would you be able to? I guess not. If you had the first 2 rounds at home sites, those who had home sites in round 1 would not get a home site back to back, because that would be the one thing you try to avoid, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you're a top 4 seed, well, of course, the number 1 seed would get 1 home game because they're going to get a bye. And maybe the others get home game, but I'm telling you the attendance wasn't as great. Y'all saw those empty seats on some of those games.
Yeah.
Now the Rose Bowl was packed because it's Oregon and USC. That was a natural. But for teams that have to travel, I just don't think that it's as feasible, and I don't think they're maximizing the gate by having teams leave. Like Texas is going to play in Atlanta 3 times. I wish they get rid of the conference title games, but Mickey Mouse not gonna let them do that, making too much money. Too much money.
And if a fan base like Texas, as large as it is, or Ohio State, or Penn State, if they struggle with ticket prices as big as they are and how much money they have, because they always tell you how much they have, that is an issue.
It is. Because you got to remember, you've got Christmas shopping, and then holiday travel mixed in, and then most of these diehard fans have gone to all the home games. And for the good seats, you have to donate to the Longhorn Foundation. There's no telling how much they're getting for that. So this is not about rich people. This is not about people like David Smoak. This is about people like me and Paul Catalina, who actually work for a living and are living check to check. So for those people, I talked to some at the airport, man, they were struggling. And I asked one lady, I go, if they beat Ohio State, are you going to be back in Atlanta? She goes, I don't have a choice. I love them. And she goes, I'm just going to have to move some money around. And I'm sitting there going,
man,
you have to get a second job, lady. That's
brutal,
man. It's brutal. And, I love her passion and her love and her loyalty for the program. But when it starts to hit you in the back pocket, you got to come up with something else. And I think giving them a couple of home games, I think might be the answer. And getting rid of those conference championship games. That's a trip to Atlanta that they wouldn't have had to take.
Yeah, but that's going to give them, you would think, a comfortable feeling of going back to Atlanta again, because they've already been there twice. Last week against Arizona State also, even though they lost the game to Georgia. Were you at the Super Bowl when they tried to host it at AT&T Stadium and they had the ice storm?
That was Green Bay, Pittsburgh. That's the last one I covered, I think. Yeah, I was at that one. I was invited to Serena Williams' party, and I looked outside, and I saw that ice, and I was like, man, I don't have any skis. I can't get over there. And you know what? I could have hung out with Serena. I mean,
no. Yeah, and it's supposed to be kind of nasty mixed with maybe snow and ice and sleet. So get up there early. I know they'll have press day and all that stuff, so be careful when you're up there, my man.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm headed up there Wednesday. They got a evening media availability, and then Thursday is the coaches, and then Friday's the big game. So yeah, I'm going to get up there a day early and hole up. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I don't do smoke, and I definitely don't do ice. If there's not a glass of tea involved, I'm not doing ice.
I knew Paul likes to do stand-up comedy, but I think he's got a partner now with you, Cedric, with all the one-liners from today. Hey, man, love you. Appreciate your time. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the week of covering the game.
Love you guys, too. Take care.
Yeah, Cedric Golden, Austin American statesman, with us on 365 Sports. And again, that game is on Friday. And then the game Thursday, Penn State, Notre Dame, we had Bobby Taylor. Craig, we wanted to, you had brought this up when we were looking at kind of what we had topics on the playoffs. I do think the second round home game for the top 4 seeds would be very good. I think that the crowds would even be larger, and they have an extra week to sell tickets because they know they're going to be off the first week. That's the one thing I would change.
I just think, isn't getting a bye and home field like a lot?
Well,
maybe not. Maybe not. I'm just asking. Like you already get you get one less game and you get to play at home.
Look, if you're one of the best teams, I just think it's the simplest thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's the simplest thing.
Okay, let's put it this way. I'm not trying to give them even more of an advantage, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see how the fans, which we never care about, right, how they can be better given opportunity to be at otherwise something.
Well, and look, I also I agree with them. The conference championship game's not going away because it's millions. It's a data point. But as the conferences get bigger, the less likely you are to have the. Honestly, you could have put any one of 6 teams in the SEC title game and had the 2 best teams in theory, right?
Of course.
Because the league's so huge right now. Same everywhere else. Were Iowa State and Arizona State the 2 best teams in the league? They had the 2 best records. And we get into that, but it's just tiebreakers and all that. But yeah, I think that they have to simplify it. I think that they need to seed it in order of how it is, because if you want to avoid blowouts, the best thing to do to avoid blowouts is seed people in order and not change that.
Yeah, and that's true.
So if that's the concern, is about blowouts, which again, I don't know if
There's
even if
always
you
been blowouts.
But if you
We
even
would not
do
be
that,
hearing about this if it was on the other foot.
yeah.
We would not be hearing about this hardly at all. If
Yeah.
it was not Alabama not getting a nod or Georgia getting knocked out early, we would not be talking about this nearly as much. But I get that's the way the landscape is nowadays.
So look, I think that they need to do everything they can do to make it better, not to placate any league, but to make it better for all the leagues and make it better for the viewer. If you make it better for the viewer, it's going to be good. If you care about the fans, whether they're watching on TV or at the stadium, and you're going to make it efficient for them cost-wise, that's good. So whatever they have to do that, that's what they need to do. And making somebody go to Atlanta maybe 3 times is dumb. It's just dumb.
Yeah, and I think somebody would probably say, well, the NFL, you get the bye, and then you get to host. The Chiefs get the bye, right? And then they get to host. They also have salary caps, and they have the NFL draft, and they have things that make it a little bit more equal. You're taking already really unequal terms in some matchups, and you're giving even more to the team that's already got like a hugely inherent advantage in every way, shape, or form. You're giving them a bye, home field.
Well, they went 0-4.
I know, but in changing the layout, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about a whole new situation where we're suddenly giving them home field in addition to the bye.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just think that, yes, that's the way that it is in the NFL, and that's clearly what you're trying to copycat in a lot of ways nowadays as college football leaders. But it's also not the same thing where the worst team's going to get Jeremiah Smith next year in the NFL draft. No, he's still going to be on Ohio State.
Yep.
And if he were to leave, it would be to Michigan or Texas or
Yep.
And here we are, and we've got the most bluey of blue blood Final Four imaginable. Like the only team that could be more blue blood is Alabama. But other than that, we've got as blue as you're going to possibly get. Ohio State.
The least blue blood program in these 4 is Penn State.
Yes. And you know what? And I would have an argument about, like, if we were arguing precise terms of what blue blood even means.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them in there.
They wouldn't be in there. Yeah.
Whoa.
But, like, historically, they are generally, but like in terms of
national title.
Yeah. Huh? Exactly right.
Won national title.
Exactly right. But they're in pretty much every other category. They're considered a blue blood.
Yeah,
but this is the bluest of blue bloods. You know why? Because as we said during this whole process from the beginning, if you didn't win a national title before when you only had to win 1 game, or even 2 games, Cincinnati, TCU, whoever, you're probably never going to win this one unless you have like a boon with some NIL donors that decide like we're going all in T-Boone Pickens style and we're going to buy you a championship. But outside of that, everything stacks up for those who already had the biggest advantages to begin with. So now you want to give them even more, and it's just like,
but
yeah.
Let me make sure we get this correct. 82, Todd Blackledge.
Okay.
They beat Nebraska
and
then won the national title. Then in 86, they upset Miami.
Okay, okay. Sorry.
Just so we don't get Penn State fans on us.
Sorry about that.
Add Paul
Catalina.
Catalina.
I forgot about that, the 82 one. But here's what I'll say, though. One of the things I think this has proven out that we've seen is this is not about conferences.
Right.
This is not about conferences.
Yeah.
That's the propaganda we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
This is not about conferences.
We got to get away from the conference
exactly.
conference.
But
stuff.
this has proved it that, look, you're in the four that are left are Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, and Penn State. That's brands.
Yeah.
They would be brands in whatever conference they're in. If you put them all in the Mountain West, they'd be the brands. Like, nothing would change for them. Like, that's what they do. This is about brands. So your goal needs to be good enough to knock off a brand or two on the way and make yourself into one. And ultimately, look, who's the number one team in the country who wants to be a brand so bad but can't do it?
A&M?
Nope, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
Oregon is right there.
You know what? I wonder if Dan Lanning having this run and yet not getting anything out of it other than...
It's 2 years, so... yeah, which is a long time.
Is he all of a sudden going to be tempted by money in the NFL with 4, 5, or 6 jobs open?
I don't know. Well, that remains to be seen with that. But Oregon's gotten invited to play like 18 holes by a member one time, and they said, we've got to do this. And then they're just standing outside going, we're on the municipal course.
Yeah.
That's where they are. And they've tried.
Well, they're a pretty good country club.
They've gotten close.
But they're not in that one.
They were right there on the doorstep against Ohio State and got their ass kicked. And then, again, Ohio State really doesn't want them in, apparently, because that's the last 2 times they've gotten reasonably close. That's who's sent them away.
Yeah, so as far as the playoff and just in general, I mean, I love the home sites. I think those are amazing that you want more of that, right? I think, you want as much of that as you can possibly get because that environment was just so great at each of the sites. So I could see that expanding. And I'm at a crossroads in terms of my opinion on you get a bye and you get home field. I don't know a better way to do it other than to have a 16-team playoff. I guess my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is ideally we would have had an 8-team playoff. That would have been perfect. 8 teams, no byes. I think that would have been
4 teams at home and then semis and then championship.
I just think that would have been perfect, but I also understand, then you can't have 4 teams from the Big Ten. You can't have 4 teams from the SEC, so we can't do only 8 unless we just go and do our own thing or whatever, which clearly they're not able to or capable of doing at the moment or maybe in the near future, as much as that's like a boogeyman that's out there. But I love the home sites. I do, if I had my way, I would rather see, I think, 8 teams, even though I am Mr. like, what are we complaining about, more football? But I think if you were to make it like as elite of the elite as possible, 4 is not enough. 12 in some cases may be too many. I'm not going to push it away, though, and say I don't like the 12 team. I do enjoy it, but I do think 8 would have been like, that would have been pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah. Okay, who gets left out?
Right, then that would have been a great conversation, and it would have been an even more heated conversation because then you're really getting into like that back end of those 4 teams that did make it.
The SEC, if you had 8, Texas and Georgia would still be in.
Tennessee's not in there.
Ohio State, Penn State would have been in it.
Oregon would have been in it.
Tennessee probably not, especially if
that's what I'm saying. So that's why they won't ever do that because that's not enough to stuff the pockets of Greg Sankey and everybody else like him. Who's his Big Ten counterpart? Petiti? It's Petiti. His name just escaped me for a moment. So, like, that, they're clearly never going to go for that, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So, if anything, we're going to 16 before we're going backwards.
Why? Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
But I do love the home sites. I do think they need to get, like, to a place where it does make sense with the home locales and how they kind of want to arrange that because I do think that Texas, not Texas, but those first-round bye teams would have loved the opportunity. But like Phil said, you're not going to turn down a bye and not having to play to host a game and risk not getting into the next round.
If you get a chance to, why would people in the NFL fight all year long to not have to play in the wild card week?
Yeah, but so I think that part of it's awesome. I've enjoyed it. I know that you're trying to prevent blowouts and everything like that, but I'm knowing for a fact that we're going to be watching these NFL playoffs, and barring some miracle, there's going to be some blowouts in some of these games. I mean, the blowouts, you can't totally set yourself up to avoid those. It's just not possible.
Every year and forever there have been blowouts in the playoffs.
Well, and it's only because of the teams that lost. That's why we heard that more than ever before.
For this year,
yes,
right? Yeah.
That's why we heard the blowout line like immediately
Or
after the first
TCU.
weekend.
Yeah.
Is because of the teams that did lose, who they were, and who cheers for them and covers them while they cheer for them.
Yeah.
That's why we heard so much outcry about that.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed it. It could definitely be better. But I'm open to anybody's opinions on how they would tweak things, because I think it's all up for discussion this offseason, and clearly it's not going to change for next year. But it is going to change in a couple of years. And what that looks like, if it's 12 or it's 16 or if it's first-round buys here, it's no first-round buys. Like, I think if anything, I would enjoy the no first-round buy and having teams like a nice round number all hosting as opposed to buys. That would be like the one thing I wish we could get. But with 12, that's obviously not possible, so we'll see.
By the way, I feel like I have pretty good depth when it comes to college football history, and I'm intrigued by. I know this blue blood argument can always go forever, and has a team not been good for a while? And if we would have had this argument 5 years ago, would that mean that Texas is in a drought, whatever? But they're a blue blood. I know Nebraska sucks now. But their history is amazing with 5 national titles. I'm just saying that because I've seen that. Penn State won 2 national titles, had a couple of years where they were unbeaten and didn't get a chance to play for one when they were really, really good. They are number 7 all time with victories, 921, but they have one Heisman winner. John Cappelletti won the Heisman Trophy. And I see there are a lot of people say they're not a blue blood. I'm not the guy who decides that, but I do think that that's interesting because they're right there on the edge of that.
It depends on your definition of it.
Yeah, they're the least blue bloody of the blue bloods.
Of these four. Oh, yeah.
But,
Notre Dame, Texas, and Ohio State, absolutely.
I mean, they'd also be behind Oklahoma. They'd be behind numerous other teams as well. So they'd be on the back.
Not numerous.
I mean, how much is numerous to you?
I think the blue blood number has to be somewhere between like 6 and 8. Don't you?
It's probably there, but they're like then 9.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It would be interesting, but I do think they have one hell of a good history. But I didn't think about the fact that they would be on the edge, possibly, because Georgia's not a Georgia blue blood. See, because is it what you've done recently? Is it okay? We're going to go back to the 40s. Is it post 1969 integration? 68, whatever. It's a great debate. It's one of those you can debate
Georgia
about.
now is, I think, you've got 4 national titles. I think that pretty firmly puts you in the blue blood. If Penn State had 3, I wouldn't even question it. The fact they have a couple of them is the only reason why I'm like, they're not quite 7 at Oklahoma or 8 at Ohio State or
5. How many do they have? Who
Ohio State?
No, Ohio State's got a bunch of them.
I just said 8.
Yeah, we're not talking
7
about all
or 8.
the ones that are flimsy. We're talking about they want it straight out. The best of the ones that you can win to win a national title. Yeah, Ohio State, Oklahoma. And I think that you have to have maybe some sort of success over the 25 years. If you are on it, whatever.
Look, if they're not one, by your definition, they are the closest to being one that's not one.
I agree.
And if they are one, then I'm not going to argue with you over that. But I don't think they're quite to the level. If you want to make it as exclusive a country club as possible, I don't think 2 national titles and a Heisman necessarily get you into that upper golden circle, if you will. That's Bama and USC and OU and whoever else you want to throw in there. But they're right there, or they're in it, depending on your definition of a blue blood. But, I'm not going to squabble over that because I know that can go on forever.
Oh, no, because then you get Florida State, Florida, Miami, and then you start to –
I'll tell you they're not. I mean, like, they don't have enough overall wins. I mean, they have probably –
You're talking about Florida State.
Yeah. They probably have the 3rd greatest coach.
Well, they didn't play football forever.
Yeah. No, they didn't. They probably have the 3rd greatest coach of all time. They've got 1, 2, 3 Heisman Trophy winners, right? 3 Heisman Trophy winners, 3 national titles. They're right there.
They're right.
I mean,
Penn State by those categories.
Yeah, I mean, so they're right there.
Garrett, LSU?
I can see it be debatable.
Yeah.
Definitely debatable.
I think there's a list of about 8 teams that's debatable of whether they should be a part of the list of 6 or 8 teams.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean,
we can talk about that forever.
LSU's got a bunch of Heisman Trophy winners. They've got multiple national titles. So.
All right. Appreciate it. A lot of you have enjoyed 2 or 3 of the topics, especially from the blue blood talk of late, but also that the targeting, which no one is everybody going to be on the same page with that, but it was fun to get your feedback on that as well.
Well, and on that, the whole point in bringing that up originally was just that Brett Yormark, we haven't heard a lot from him, and he did come out and say something in regards to that and wanting clarity and wanting national officiating standards. And I think regardless of whether you agree with the targeting call or not, or whether you agree with targeting in general, we can all agree that there could be better officiating in college football.
Yeah.
It would clear up a lot of the problems that arise from time to time, like in that particular game where we're all going, well, what's targeting? I don't know. Do you know what targeting is? That's clearly targeting. No, it's not. That's clearly not targeting, and none of us really know.
And if you eliminate targeting at all, then you won't have all those conversations.
Well, you'd have a lot of lawsuits.
Yeah.
But, so regardless, I'm glad that Brett Yormark stood up and said something. I'm glad that he wasn't as whiny as Mark Harlan at Utah when they had their own little issue a few weeks back after the BYU game. But I thought he made a good point, and I think most people would probably agree with him that, yeah, we could definitely have a better system of officiating and have it more standard across the board rather than, oh, crap, they drew the ACC crew. That means that, it shouldn't mean anything. They should just be football officials.
No, and not have any affiliations. And it doesn't matter where they live. But that's probably asking for too much. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina, and also his top 5. I think at some point I will give everybody, including you, our audience, and me, Craig, Paul, etc., Garrett, Emery, we'll let him involved too. How would you rank the Big 12 power poll now, after all of the games from the Big 12, post games and all that, postseason games have been played? How would you rank it? Let's do that. We'll do that at some point this week, so stand by for that.
Yeah, and we need to touch on just the overall bowl records, because I'll mention it here just in case we don't, but 2-11 by the ACC. 2-11.
That's what happens when you when you exclude Florida State for just barely missing it at 2-10.
My gosh, that is terrible.
Just barely missed it by 4 games.
It would have been 2-12.
But I do think there were some big wins, and there's some definitely momentum that certain programs can carry over, things that just make you more optimistic moving forward. So I don't take away a lot from bowl season, but again, it's worth mentioning the ACC was 2-11 this postseason.
It didn't make, but I'm not so sure now that we can really do. Now 2-11's bad. Listen, it is, but I'm not so sure you could even really come up with a way to grade that because of the portal, opt-outs, and much more.
No, and that's why I don't want to spend a ton of time on the actual what does this mean, if anything. But it is. I think it was a very interesting bowl season. Big 12 finished 4-5. That's not great either. That's worth breaking down a little bit. But you don't. Well, West Virginia's. You don't take anything from that other than they played hard before Rich Rod takes over and put on a good display for him while he was up there in the booth talking to ESPN. There's not a lot you take away from that, but I do think there are some underlying storylines that kind of carry you into the offseason that could be interesting to touch on in just kind of a look back.
When we come back, Paul Catalina's top 5. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great deals, great customer service, and great options for a brand new or pre-owned vehicle, depending on what you want to find yourself getting into this holiday season that continues on now here at the first of the month. And Richard Carr, a place that I've gone to now on multiple occasions to get my car fixed up. I know you've been having issues here lately. If you are somebody who's having a bit of a problem with your vehicle, or your problem is that you just want to get into a new one, they can hook you up regardless of what you're looking to do. And right now they've got their biggest pre-owned sale ever, the biggest pre-owned sale all year going on with the pre-owned Green Tag Savings event at Richard Carr. They have too many used cars and trucks on the lot, and every one of them are Green Tag price with big savings, so save green at their expense. And right now, perhaps you're looking for a new Buick, a Cadillac, or GMC. Well, if you are, good news, big end-of-year savings going on now. Sees all 3 of those lines with big deductions on their price tags. All 2024 cars and trucks are priced to sell, and right now that includes deals like $8,000 off a 2024 GMC Sierra SLT truck. Also, AT4X Sierras and 4-wheel drive versions have even bigger savings than the $8,000 that you can check out for yourself. And on top of that, Costco members, wonder how that would all come together. Well, Costco members can save an extra $1,000. So thousands in savings right now off the 2024 GMC Sierra SLT trucks, and that's just one of their many offerings. So if you want to Get a little bit of excitement at the start of this new year. Get into something that gives you a bit more peace of mind. Check out their offerings right now. It's the most wonderful time of year to save on a new car or truck with big end-of-year savings going on right now at Richard Carr. Check them out off Highway 60 Imperial Exit or richardcarr.com.
Looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler, and if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's Home Sleep Test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. Happy Monday. It's very cold in Texas for the first time in I don't know how long. So, I've stayed in with hot cocoa and done a lot of thinking about the top 5. So here they are this week. We'll start out with the Four-Timers QB Club. These are quarterbacks who have now will be on their 4th school with the transfer portal. Let's start out with number 5. And the reason he's number 5 is we don't know what his 4th school is going to be. But technically, he was at Florida, then he was at Arizona State, then he was at Georgia, and now Jaden Rashada on the lookout for a 4th school, which is really surprising given the amount of hype that went into this kid when he was coming out. The top-ranked quarterback in the country by most services. He was number 4 on the depth chart after transferring to Georgia. Arizona State didn't miss a beat without him, with Sam Leavitt making it all the way to the college football playoff, winning the Big 12, and losing to Texas in that thriller last week. But he didn't see the field at Georgia, and that's even with Carson Beck getting hurt. With Gunnar Stockton going down at the end of the SEC title game, he would not have been the quarterback who came in if Carson Beck didn't come in to do one handoff. That would have been Dominic Pulissi, their true freshman. So Jaden Rashada is in a weird spot in his career right now, and we'll see where he winds up. Number 4, Zach Calzada. Of course, this is a picture of him at Texas A&M where he started out. Then he had that great win at Auburn, but wasn't going to be the starter as Haynes King was coming back, and there was a lot of confusion there. So Zach Calzada then went to Auburn. He went from Auburn to UIW, which is famous for Cam Ward now. And now he is going to be the quarterback at Kentucky. 4 spots for Zach Calzada. Now, the one thing I will tell you about that I know about Zach Calzada is that thing right there, that right arm is a cannon. And if Kentucky can find the best way to use it, he can win some games for the Wildcats this year. But a journeyman nonetheless. Tore it up at UIW, which doesn't surprise me. He's got some talent, but again, he's on his 4th school. Number 3, Chandler Morris. This is Chandler Morris at TCU. That was his 2nd school. He started out at Oklahoma. He went to TCU, then to North Texas, and now he's going to play for Tony Elliott at Virginia, someone he knows well because his dad and Tony Elliott were together at Clemson back in the day, in Chad Morris. So Chandler Morris off to UVA to try to resurrect the Cavaliers and what has been a very bad stretch for them the last few years on the field. But Chandler Morris on his 4th team. Really, this one I didn't quite agree with. I thought being the quarterback at North Texas is about right where he needed to be. He had a fantastic year for Eric Morris in that offense. Really, really perfect fit for North Texas, but he decided to go try his wares back at the Power 5 level in the ACC at UVA. So we'll see how that goes. I think he was perfect at North Texas, but here we are. Number 2, Robbie Ashford, Oregon, Auburn, South Carolina, and now he'll be the backup at Wake Forest. Just never really worked out for Robbie Ashford, a guy who's really athletic, but maybe just not a quarterback. But he's always, he's a backup quarterback. He's going to be the backup at Wake Forest there for Jake Dickert. So I really don't have much to say about Robbie Ashford in that he had high hopes everywhere he went, but just never really was able to crack the starting lineup, and now he's on his 4th school at Wake Forest. And then Garrett's favorite on this list, TJ Finley. By the way, Auburn gets in here quite a bit. This is the 3rd different Auburn guy that we've had on this list. But LSU, Auburn, Texas State, Western Kentucky, and now Tulane. 5 schools for TJ Finley. 5. The biggest beneficiary of the COVID year, not named Cam McCormick, by far. Again, I'm going to go through that with TJ Finley. LSU, Auburn, Texas State, Western Kentucky, Tulane. 5 different schools. I'm a transfer portal advocate, but sometimes you got to put your boots down and stay somewhere. TJ Finley is the journeyman quarterback of all journeyman quarterbacks. At least in the NFL, they cut you and tell you to go. TJ Finley leaves a lot of these places just willingly and just keeps trying to chase that next opportunity. And, maybe he's going to be the quarterback at Tulane, maybe not. I think they like the younger guy that they got. So we'll see. Best of luck to you, TJ Finley. But 5 different schools, and there are a lot of people watching this rolling their eyes right now. That's going to do it for this edition of the Top 5. Thanks for watching. We're wrapping it up right now.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. When Phil Bennett was talking about how they need to get control of it, I do know that a couple of you contacted and said, coaches get to leave. You still at some point need leadership and rules. It's not trying to keep money away from the players. That, as they say, haze out the barn on that. But it's just from a guy who's been a part of it for 47 years of him wanting to still see college football keep some of its innocence, although I don't think that's possible anymore. For Craig Smoak and for Paul Catalina, we're back at it again tomorrow. More on the semifinals, Penn State, Notre Dame Thursday, Texas and Ohio State Friday, and, of course, a lot more to get to. Anything else new in coaching, transfer portal, Emery Winter is editing already. 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Garrett Ross, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. I'm David Smoak. Thank you. Those who watch or listen, don't forget, if you don't mind, to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't. And good night, 365 Sports.